Chapter 681, Sleep His Fill. Fei Lai had never seen Chen Zhao sleep for 2 days in a row. If he didn't turn occasionally, Fei Lai would suspect that he was in a coma. They couldn't go anywhere these 2 days either. If it wasn't for House's arrangement, they might not even have a place to stay. All the hotels were packed. The entirety of New York City was covered in mud. Of course, House's abilities showed now. Even when all of the hotels were packed, he could still get Chen Zhao and Fei Lai into the best hotel. When Chen Zhao woke up, New York had recovered too. New York City was the world's busiest city and had an annual GDP of $1 trillion. When a city like this stopped operating for a day, billions of dollars would be lost. Even though tragedy floated over every corner of the city, things went back to normal in only 2 days. Chen Zhao stretched in bed. Sleeping was the best enjoyment for humans. All of his pain and weakness had disappeared. Fei Lai, how long did I sleep for? Fei Lai brought him breakfast and looked at the time. 51 hours in total. 51 hours. Chen Zhao was shocked. What date is it? The 20th. Is Rufford's race today? He called yesterday, Fei Lai said. The New York leg is cancelled. Chen Zhao thought about it and didn't find it unexpected. What about Zola's fashion show? It was held yesterday. In times like this, people would still attend a fashion show. You underestimate the wealthy's resistance toward a disaster. For them, this is just a special experience. Chen Zhao didn't know how to reply. He pulled Fei Lai into his arms and said, "Do you dislike rich people?" "How can I? You're a rich person now too." Chen Zhao's hand started straying, but Fei Lai stopped him quickly. "Wait. What's wrong? You can't today." Cough, cough. Alice coughed awkwardly. Chen Zhao finally realized that there was another person in the room. "Alice, how come you're still here?" Alice's expression was awkward. "Where do you think she should be?" Fei Lai rolled her eyes. Chen Zhao had a blank face. "What else? The problem is solved, and no one will keep trying to kill her. Shouldn't she disappear from my eyes now? She's just a child. She's 18, right? 16. Okay, 16 is an adult in some states, I think, so I believe she knows where she should go now. Mr. Chen, I want to join the supernatural organization." Chen Zhao was speechless. Was the supernatural organization something you could join whenever you wanted? "Mr. Chen, my teacher Michelle is known as the Wikipedia of magic. And now, not a bit of that Wikipedia is left, right?" Fei Lai pinched Chen Zhao. Why did he have to make it sound so bad? The little girl just lost her family. Couldn't he be nicer? Chen Zhao couldn't help it. He didn't want to hurt Alice, but he really didn't want the supernatural organization to become a trash collection. Right now, the only one who could fight was Gaia. The ratio was already low enough. If he added another failure, then it would lower the average of the group again. Half of the Witch Society's books are recorded in my blood. I can contribute them all to the supernatural organization. Chen Zhao's eyebrow arched. Welcome to the supernatural organization. Fei Lai and Alice were speechless. Just then Chen Zhao's phone rang. "Chen, it's me, Louis." "Oh, Louis, what's wrong? Did you forget something?" "Huh." Chen Zhao thought about it. Then he suddenly remembered that he might have agreed to help treat Louis's friend. "Oh, I remember. Your friend's condition, right?" "Yes. When are you free?" "I'm free now, but if I have to give your friend a checkup, then can you lend me your private jet?" Fei Lai and Alice were speechless. "Just tell me when you want to use the plane. It's ready for you at any time." "Sure. Where's your friend?" "I'll go over now." "Where are you?" "I'll pick you up." "Fei Lai, where are we now?" "Hilda Hotel." "This is the Hilda Hotel?" Chen Zhao was somewhat shocked. He would never forget the Hilda Hotel, or what had happened there. "What's wrong? Is this some strange place?" Fei Lai didn't know what had happened, but Alice did. She didn't participate in that battle, but it didn't stop her from knowing about it, or how Chen Zhao had performed during it. A while later, Louis was here. "Chen, have you been living here these days?" "Yeah, what's wrong?" "After the rain stopped, I went to your neighborhood to look for you, but you'd already left." "No shit. How can anyone still live there?" "I used all my connections but couldn't find you. You didn't register with the hotel? My friend helped me, Chen Zhao said. It's that urgent. It's urgent for my friend, Louis said. What exactly is wrong with him? It's hard to say. What's hard to say? Are there no symptoms? She keeps saying there's someone in front of her, but the others in her house don't see anyone. Chen Zhao considered it. Hysteria. She says her mind is normal. I suspect that she's seeing ghosts. You have magic inside of you now. Can you see the people that she's seeing? No. Louis shook his head. What about George? Can he see his own people? No. Have you checked a psychologist? Do you think it's hysteria? I hope not, Chen Zhao said helplessly. That's the only condition I can't help with. Whatever it is, please go take a look. Chen Zhao nodded. Louis's friend was rich too. There were a dozen servants just in the garden, but they kept cleaning up the garden. The rainstorm from a few days ago had affected this place too. Louis led Chen Zhao to the front yard. There was a woman sitting under a parasol in the distance with a butler in a black uniform beside her. Norma, uncle is here. Chen Zhao glanced at Louis. Didn't he say it was a friend? How come it's his niece? Chapter 682, Eyes. Norma stood up, but she did not look at Louis. Uncle, who's the person beside you? My friend. He's a doctor. Uncle, I'm not ill, Norma said, turning her head away. Chen Zhao realized that Norma had not been looking at them. Blind? Chen Zhao looked at Louis in surprise. Feeling Chen Zhao's stare, Louis nodded gently. Ms. Norma, nice to meet you. Hello, sir. Thank you for coming here, but I don't need a doctor. It was clear that Norma was well educated. Chen Zhao realized that Norma's eyes were abnormal. A normal person's pupils are surrounded by the iris sphincter muscle and the iris dilator muscle. The pupil is the dark hole at the center of the eye. The iris sphincter muscle is a circular muscle around the pupil whose function is to narrow the pupil. On the other hand, the iris dilator muscle runs radially to the pupil and can enlarge the pupil. However, Chen Zhao did not notice any sphincter or dilator muscles in Norma's eyes. Her eyes looked like green gems. That was probably why she was blind. Norma stopped being stubborn. Uncle, do you think I'm mentally ill? Chen is not a psychiatrist. He doesn't really smell of medicine. Only a psychiatrist would have such a faint smell. If he's from any other specialty, the smell of medicine would be much stronger, Norma said. What else do you smell apart from medicine? Blood. Have you just done a surgery? Do you know any psychiatrist who performs surgery? You're really not a psychiatrist. I know many specialties but not psychiatry. If you need a psychiatrist, I actually know a professional one. Fine. Sorry, doctor. Norma asked Louis. Uncle, why did you bring a doctor here? Chen Zhao looked at Norma. She obviously disliked doctors. After recognizing that Chen Zhao was not a psychiatrist, Norma's attitude only bettered slightly. Norma, mister. Chen is here to confirm if you've really been seeing things. Uncle, I don't understand. I know you don't like this, but all I hope is that you can recover. Uncle, I know what I saw. I know what's real and what's fake. Long-term darkness had given her more time to think. It also made her calmer and more rational than the average person. Of course, she had also become more sensitive. That was why she sounded unfriendly when Louis brought Chen Zhao in. Just then, a man walked in from outside. Mr. Louis. Louis glanced at him and nodded slightly. He's my friend, Chen Zhao, a doctor, Louis said. Then he pointed at the man. Braig, Norma's fiancé. Hello. Chen Zhao shook hands with Braig. Braig, help me to walk Uncle and Mr. Chen out. Sure. Since Norma was chasing them out, there was no reason for them to stay longer. Stay here with Norma. We'll leave ourselves, Louis said. The two left the manor. Louis did not speak on the way. He was also somewhat angry at Norma's attitude. Nevertheless, she was his niece after all. After boarding the car, Louis finally asked, Chen, is Norma ill? No. Such a rational person cannot be ill, Chen Zhao said. Hysteria usually occurs in people who are lonely or aggressive, not an absolutely rational person. Which means she really saw ghosts. Louis asked again. Chen Zhao shook his head. I brought an evil spirit with me, but she didn't see it. In fact, Chen Zhao had brought Blackie, who had released an evil spirit just now. But Norma did not see the spirit. You had an evil spirit? I didn't see it either. With your magical power, you can at most see it at night. But I can see George in the day. What do you mean? You've been staying with him all the time. You're already covered in his scent. Chen Zhao rolled his eyes. You said that Norma can't see spirits, but she did see them. What's happening? I don't get it. She can't see things, but someone can make her see things. What? Someone has been casting illusion spells on her, making her think that she saw people. In fact, she didn't see any spirits or delusions. It's an image created by magic, Chen Zhao said. Ha! Watch that braid closely. When I shook his hands, I smelled magical phosphor. It's a common magic material. You mean Braig is a sorcerer, and he casts spells on Norma? Dunno. I was just analyzing using logic. Don't ask me why. I don't even know the two of them. Norma's property? But even after they marry, he won't receive any of her property. Louis muttered to himself, making guesses. When can you lend me your plane? Air. Chen, when are you going back to LA? Tomorrow, Chen Zhao said. That soon? I've been here for a while already. It's time to go back. Louis clearly did not want Chen Zhao to return so soon. He already believed Chen Zhao's words. According to his speculation, Braig was the most suspicious person. But Louis had no idea how to solve the problem. Chen, what should I do? Beat him up. If everything goes smoothly, you'll find out about his aim. But you said he's a sorcerer, right? He's probably only strong enough to fight normal people. A gun is enough to deal with him. That's simple. What were you thinking? In the past, Chen Zhao was scared of witches and sorcerers. He felt that they were mysterious beings. But after contacting them for such a long time, he realized that they were only mysterious. They were not necessarily more threatening than a gun. Braig was probably as strong as West from the supernatural organization. Maybe he knew some spells, but he might be weaker than a gun in combat. Really? Chapter 683, Return. Louis wasn't very familiar with the supernatural circle. Before, he'd been like Chen Zhao, and thought that all of them were super cool. Now he counted as a member too. If supernatural people really were so almighty, then there wouldn't be so much poverty in the world. Take Sienna as an example. She wasn't a top witch, but she was quite experienced. However, she merely had a stable job now. That was it. They spent another day in New York City, and bought some gifts for their friends in L.A. Chun, you're having Princess and the others carry so much. If PETA sees, they'll definitely sue you. Let them sue me, Chen Zhao said lazily. Princess carried a backpack while pulling a large suitcase. With a group of animals behind her, the sight was very powerful. Everyone in the lobby retreated after seeing this. Chen Zhao and Fei Lai strolled past, and went straight to the airport. Because they went through the special passage, the security check went quickly. The entire process was very smooth. This was the special right for rich people. It showed in all aspects of society. After a 4-hour flight, Chen Zhao's family finally arrived in L.A. Chen Zhao and Fei Lai were both exhausted. They were finally home. Alice was also exhausted. She'd left the New York that she'd grown up in and came to this unfamiliar city. On the way home, Fei Lai received Robio's call. Fei Lai, are you back? Don't you know that you've ditched work for a day? Chen Zhao took Fei Lai's phone. Hey Robio, don't you know that all flights from New York stopped these past days? They only started again today. It's force majeure. Hi Chen. You're back? We just got off the plane. We brought you a gift too, and we're planning on going to the beach now. Okay, I take back what I said earlier. Robio and Chen Zhao were already very familiar with each other, so he didn't say anything offensive. He called Fei Lai out of his own duties. Chen Zhao and Fei Lai parked the RV on the seaside road, and the family got out. Princess and the others already recovered and ran around energetically. They loved beaches, especially Angel Beach. Everything here was familiar, including the visitors. Mom, look, it's Black Ma and White Ma. I want to go play with them. No, there's a bear over there. But look, there are so many people there. I wanna go. These animals were too popular at Angel Beach. Black Ma, White Ma, and Walter were practically celebrities. Chun Zhao and Fei Lai went into the coastal rescue team's office, each with bags in their hands. Fei Lai, you're back. Chun, you're here too. The members of the coastal rescue team all came over to greet Chun Zhao and Fei Lai. Fei Lai's gifts for her female colleagues were all high-class makeup products worth tens of thousands of dollars. The colleagues accepted the gifts with complicated feelings, both hating and loving Fei Lai. Chun Zhao went into Robio's office and tossed a gift box onto the table. For you. Robio opened the box. It was a $10,000 watch. He accepted the gift with a smile. I heard about New York. How is it? Did you and Fei Lai get hurt? We were okay. We were in the hotel, so it was relatively safe. Thousands of people died from the sudden rainstorm. I really didn't think that something like this could happen in a city like New York. I think the mayor even stepped down from his position. Chun Zhao didn't care while Robio cared more. I saw in the news that a group of animals and a couple saved a bus of kids. Robio looked at him meaningfully. Fine, I don't get anything out of telling you about this. I know one of the kids, Robio said. I want to thank you for her and her parents. Chun Zhao was surprised. He didn't think that Robio would know one of the kids he'd saved. I think it was my best decision to let Fei Lai take a break. So would you be faster at giving Fei Lai vacation next time? Don't even think about it. Fei Lai used up all her PTO for this year. She won't have any days off after this. Give the watch back to me. New York's rainstorm didn't only affect this one city. Even a city like L.A. in the Southwest had to readjust to avoid ending up like New York if something similar happened. After all, New York's rainstorm was a supernatural phenomenon. Fei Lai went to the beach, so she didn't plan on going home immediately. She put on her lifeguard clothing and started working. Chun Zhao stayed to chat with the other lifeguards. Offshore area 150 meters, 2 kids fell in the water. Instantly, a few lifeguards in red uniforms ran out. Fei Lai quickly carried one kid to land. Chun Zhao stood in the office, gazing at Fei Lai. This was the job that Fei Lai did every day. This was also why Chun Zhao never stopped Fei Lai from coming to work. This was her attitude toward life. She had her own pursuit. Just like with doctors, they all started with a heart that wanted to save the world. Later, Chun Zhao changed slowly, becoming power-hungry, greedy, and realistic. But this didn't mean that he had to deny someone else's ideals. It was like someone who'd been molded by society laughing at someone else's naive dream. Just then, a young man walked over to Fei Lai. Hello, miss. How may I help you? She turned toward him, thinking that he needed help. Miss, are you interested in acting in a movie? The man looked at Fei Lai with greed and desire. She was an exquisite woman who was healthy and filled with spirit. I can help you get into many movies and become a big star. The man reached out to pat Fei Lai's shoulder. But she dodged him and stared with furrowed brows. Sorry, I'm not interested. Miss, perhaps you don't know me, but I'm sure you won't reject this card. The man took out a black card. I'm not interested in either you or your card. Chapter 684 Wealth. It was not the first time Fei Lai was harassed like this. There were all kinds of tourists on the beach. Nobody could guarantee that everyone was upright. Miss, my father is the second largest shareholder of PLM Film. With your look, I can definitely turn you into a superstar. Tony stared at Fei Lai, his eyes glowing. Of course, his words could only deceive an inexperienced woman. Even his father could not ensure that someone would become a star. Every year, there were always a dozen blockbusters, half of which had newcomers as their leads. But only a handful would become famous. Nevertheless, Tony's trick had been very successful. In LA, 90% of women had the dream of becoming a star. He believed that the woman before him would take the bait easily, like those in the past. Sorry, not interested. Fei Lai turned to leave. Wait! Tony grabbed Fei Lai's shoulder. Immediately Fei Lai was enraged. She bent Tony's wrist, turned around and kicked his face. Ah, fucking by *ch. I'm gonna kill you. I'll send you into the dirtiest brothel, and make sure you get AIDS. Fei Lai was probably even stronger than the male lifeguards here. Her combo broke Tony's wrist and fractured his nose. Fuck you. Fei Lai gave him the middle finger. Tony collapsed on the ground and screamed wildly, spitting out a few teeth in the meantime. Fei Lai had injured him greatly. Standing on the lifeguard tower, Chen Zhao saw everything. Chen Zhao walked forward and hugged Fei Lai. What happened? Nothing, just a rich man's kid. Fei Lai briefly described the incident. Squinting, Chen Zhao watched as Tony was carried away by his companions. Master, do you want to kill the person who offended Madam? Chen Zhao realized that Black Ma was beside him. He lowered his head and glanced at Black Ma. Is it that obvious? Master, you've never used my power. Your power? Master, have you forgotten? White Ma represents wealth, while I can demand the price. Chen Zhao remembered Black Ma's ability, but he had never asked him to use it. At the start, Chen Zhao had indeed earned some wealth with White Ma's ability, but he had been paying the price with demonic crystals. Therefore, Black Ma had never displayed his ability. What's the use of your ability? I can make a person lose wealth, Black Ma said. Any amount of money? Chen Zhao asked, surprised. He had never tried to understand Black Ma's ability. It's not directly, but rather acts over a duration. The person's wealth doesn't actually disappear. White Ma will give it to someone else. Chen Zhao raised his eyebrows. Which means White Ma, and you can transfer anyone's wealth to another person like me. No. Everyone's wealth and luck are limited. Maybe your limit is to suddenly receive $1 million. Anything more will bring you a disaster. How do you calculate the limit? Chen Zhao asked, disappointed. About 10% of your current wealth. If you receive anything more, you will encounter sudden misfortune, like tripping over. If it's a lot more, you might encounter bigger problems, even losing your friends and relatives. Chen Zhao shivered. Black Ma's ability was too dangerous. It would hurt both his enemy and himself. Forget it. Let's take revenge in another way. Master, we can transfer the wealth to someone who's rich enough, or a few people. Don't you know a lot of rich people? Chen Zhao had an idea. You mean anyone who's at least 10 times as rich as him can take his wealth without risk, right? The less the wealth received, the safer it is. 10% is a safety line, but you can spread it out more. Can you use this ability indefinitely? We can always transfer wealth, but you cannot keep accepting wealth. Why? The first wealth you receive with this method is the purest. After that, your personal wealth will be intertwined with this wealth. The more wealth you receive in this way, you more things you will lose. Is there no way to avoid it? Nope, even White Ma and I cannot avoid it. Is the first time perfectly safe? As long as there are enough people, and they are rich enough, they will be able to take the windfall. Although the possibility of getting rich with their abilities was gone, it was good to have a bonanza anyway. Let's try it out on him. On their way back in the evening, Chen Zhao kept silent. On the other hand, Fei Lai was not affected by the incident in the day. It was not the first time, and would not be the last. Chen, are you still mad at what happened? No. Chen Zhao shook his head with a smile. Alice was sitting in the back seat, pretending to be transparent. She watched as Chen Zhao and Fei Lai displayed their affections toward each other. When they reached home, Alice was still shocked by their house. The mansion leaned against Mirror Lake, like an unreal piece of artwork. Mirror Lake was like an azure gem. Even the breeze was filled with a sweet scent. Of course, Chen Zhao would not keep a third wheel at home. When he was free, he would send a list to the Supernatural Organization HQ. Just as they reached home, they had a guest. However, it was an uninvited guest. Talus alighted from his car. He thought that the woman who had injured his son was from an ordinary family. It surprised him that she lived in such a luxurious house. Who are you? Chen Zhao and Fei Lai walked out of the house. Talus continued to enjoy the scenery before him, as though he did not see them. Who is Fei Lai Johnson? The lawyer beside Talus asked. Me. Why? You're involved in personal injury for severely injuring a victim. I'm here to give you the demand letter. Fei Lai's face paled. Chen Zhao hugged her shoulder and then took the letter. After glancing through it, he rolled it into a ball and threw it at the lawyer's face. You demand letter only? Why don't you send me a summons? Also, have I allowed you to enter my territory? Chen Zhao sneered. Just then, Talus turned to look at Chen Zhao. Young man, don't be that impulsive. That won't be good for you. Chapter 685. Trouble comes knocking framing. And who are you? I'm the father. Talus looked at Chen Zhao and said, Your woman hurt my son. You should find out why your son got hit. I know my son, Talus said. I know he's a good boy. Perhaps he did something wrong earlier. But I don't think the woman beside you should have been so violent. You should be glad your son is still alive, or that I wasn't there at the time. That is not a wise answer. You are creating a strong enemy, Talus said. I can make you lose everything you have right now. Your house will have a new owner, and your woman will lay in someone else's arms. Chen Zhao scoffed. I can make threats too. Plus, not only do I say them, I'll make them come true most of the time. Seems like our negotiation has failed. Be prepared to be homeless. Goodbye. Talus chuckled. Are you ready too? Chen Zhao laughed. What are you talking about me? Talus looked at him. Since we're fighting a war, you should be prepared to lose. You're saying I'll lose? Talus started laughing. Lad, maybe you don't know who you're facing yet. Since I dare to come here, I'll obviously be prepared. Then let's just wait and see. Talus was about to get into the car when he felt eyes on him. He stopped and looked back from the front of his car. He saw a black wolf beside Chen Zhao. The wolf kept staring at him. The gaze made him uncomfortable, but he still got into the car. Fei Lai looked at Chen Zhao with worry. Chen, sorry for giving you trouble. Chen Zhao hugged her shoulders. You didn't give me any trouble. None at all. But it's okay. He's just a conceited old man. Chen Zhao comforted Fei Lai. The world isn't up to him. Fei Lai still felt unsettled. She thought that she'd created big trouble for Chen Zhao. Just then a few SUVs came over. They all had police sirens on the top. Chen Zhao felt doubtful when a dozen people came out. They all wore suits, but they had police emblems on their chests. Sirs, how may I help you? The bearded man in the front took out his license. Federal Drug Enforcement. We suspect that you're creating and selling drugs here. We must search the premises. Chen Zhao frowned. Did trouble come so quickly? Please show your search warrant. The bearded man's expression darkened. Now, I suspect you're a highly dangerous criminal. Raise your arms, or else I have the right to kill you now. A dozen muzzles pointed at Chen Zhao, and his face darkened. Were they going to act like this? Did that Talus send you guys here? How much did he give you? I don't know what you're talking about. The bearded guy obviously wouldn't admit it. You two go search. Two members entered the house. But the next moment, they screamed and scrambled out. Princess blocked the doorway. Her huge figure was honestly too shocking. The bearded man and his men all pointed their guns at her. But just then Chen Zhao acted. The bearded man cried out. His arm was broken, and his gun fell into Chen Zhao's hands. All the muzzles pointed at him again. The bearded man and his group didn't think that this extra errand would be so troublesome. Cold sweat beating on his forehead, the man said, Put down the gun now and I'll pretend nothing happened. Otherwise, my men will kill you without warning. There was too much evil and darkness in this world. Even people who represented justice could fall as well. Instead of talking about killing me, you should be worried about if you can leave alive. You think you can escape with me as the hostage? You're too naive. The bearded man's broken arm gave him pain, and his breathing quickened. You didn't do your research before coming. That's not a good habit. The sounds of beasts came from around them. Black Ma, White Ma, Abitos and Snow White started surrounding them. The officers all panicked, including their guns. You still have time to put down your guns. My kids eat people, you know? It would be stranger if they put their guns down now. The more panicked they were, the more tightly they gripped their guns. Chen Zhao took out his phone. Wes, bring your people here. Now. Immediately. Who are you calling? Put the phone down. These men came on this mission without permission, so they were extremely scared. Someone who can take care of you all legally. Chen Zhao ignored the guns pointed at him. They didn't dare to shoot, so they were all nervous. Chen Zhao's eyes were aggressive. He shoved the gun that he'd stolen into the bearded man's mouth. Finally, Wes brought the people over. But when they arrived, they were shocked by the sight. The cars and their sirens already proved their identities. "President, what's going on?" West asked, looking at them from afar. "I suspect that these people were bought over. They wanted to frame me. Can I kill them?" Huh? Wes was stunned. He didn't know who these people were, but he was clear about Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao was bloodthirsty. These people seriously had the guts to be bribed to give Chen Zhao trouble. "President, wait, let me make a call," Wes said. Wes was on the phone for 3 minutes. Then he hung up and said, "President, it's okay now. You can kill them, and no one will mention it." Chen Zhao took the gun out of the bearded man's mouth and forced it against his forehead. "Wait, we can talk." The guy was about to piss his pants. He didn't know who Chen Zhao or the latecomer West were, but judging from their conversation, they seemed to have uncommon identities. "We're willing to be tainted witnesses. We indeed took bribes." The man was sweating profusely. "Everyone put your guns down. Put them down." Some people still hesitated. They felt that things were going toward an uncontrollable direction. Chapter 686, First Signs. "Do you really want to die here?" the bearded man shouted again. He was in the most dangerous spot. If any conflict were to break out, he would be the first to die. He clearly did not want to die. Now, he was already regretting his decision. Who would have thought that the innocent-looking task would turn out to be so tricky? They only had to enter this Asian's house and place a pack of drugs under his sofa. Everything would then be much simpler. Never had he thought that the sheep was actually a wolf in disguise. Moreover, Chen Zhao's identity was far more complicated than he had imagined. Not everyone was willing to risk their lives for something. Therefore, when the first person dropped his gun, cowardice spread like a disease. Such a confrontation was extremely stressful in the first place. Firing and dropping the gun were only a thought apart. When Chen Zhao returned to the house, he actually saw Fei Lai holding a gun. "Fei Lai, what are you doing?" I thought that I might be able to help if there's a gunfight." Smiling, Chen Zhao patted Fei Lai's head and took the gun away. "Where did you get that from?" "A gun shop. I have a gun license." "All right, go back to the room with Alice. We still need some time." "Okay." When Chen Zhao walked out again, Gaia was interrogating the intruders. No one in the supernatural organization was more professional than Gaia in interrogation. After a while, she managed to find out literally everything. Gaia passed the recording pen to Chen Zhao, who listened to the confession. "Is this enough to sentence Talist?" "No. If they can't provide any direct evidence, Talist can simply claim that he doesn't know them, and he's being framed." While Gaia was not an actual lawyer, she was not unfamiliar with all this. "Which means the confession in the pen is useless." "Not entirely." Gaia shook her head with a smile. "Since we don't have evidence, we can create some." "How?" Chen Zhao asked, puzzled. Gaia lifted the bearded man before Chen Zhao. Then, she took the man's phone and threw it before him. "Call Talist and tell him that it's done. Ask him for money." Talist's phone rang, and he picked it up. "Hey, is everything completed?" "Yes, mister. Talist. I put 10 kilograms of drugs under his sofa. Now he's being brought back to the station. When will I receive the money?" "Don't worry, I'll transfer you right now." After hanging up, Talist said to his assistant, "Transfer $500,000 to this account." "Sir, all the bank cards I have been cancelled. I can't make a transfer." "Why?" Talist had kept a few anonymous credit cards with his assistant for unspeakable transactions. "Mr. Tony has been using those accounts. He has been spending a lot and not paying in time, so all the accounts are now frozen or restricted," the assistant said. "I just received the news today." What a bastard. Talist knew what his son was like. He had actually caused all the cards to be frozen. Talist gritted his teeth, but he had to pay the money. "Take this card." "Sir, this card has your name on it. Are you going to transfer the money with this? Yeah, that person's safe. We have cooperated many times already, Talist said. 1. Go. Yes, sir. Talist rubbed his forehead. He was not in a good state. Suddenly he shivered. Fuck, what have I done? Talist sprang up from his chair and rushed outside. Quayne, return me my card. Am I too old? I actually used my own card. Whether that person was safe or not, this was too dangerous. Sir, here's your card. Have you made the transfer? Yes. Can you cancel it? Sir, you're a super VIP of the bank. It takes a second to complete a 500,000 transfer. Talist's face darkened. Now that the transaction was complete, he could not cancel it. Forget it, it's not the first time he worked for me. Just then the assistant's phone rang. He picked it up. Slowly his expression turned awkward. What happened? Sir, it's from the hospital. Mister. Tony destroyed a piece of medical equipment and injured other patients and doctors. The hospital is asking for compensation. They're going to sue Mr. Tony. Asshole. He can't even stop making me worried while in the hospital. Pay them a bit more and ask them to withdraw the case. Sir, the hospital is asking for compensation of $12 million. What? Talist's jaw dropped, his face filled with disbelief. What exactly did he do? He charged into the observation room and smashed an expensive machine. Fuck. Why do I have such a son? Ready the car. I'm going to the hospital. Talist stomped the ground in anger. It was 12 million. It was not like he could earn many millions in a year. Just then, they heard a housekeeper scream in the forecourt. What's happening? A housekeeper ran toward them. Sir, the garage is on fire. What? Why? It's Mr. Tony's car. He had some flammables in the trunk. They exploded and caused the fire. Talist almost collapsed on the ground. Go and extinguish the fire now. There were over 20 cars in the garage, including his favorite one. It was a custom-made car from Rolls-Royce. That car alone was almost as expensive as the others combined. If all the cars were destroyed, he would lose 60 million, or even more. The housekeepers could not go near the garage at all. They had no choice but to call the fire truck. However, the fire truck could not enter the garage due to the narrow path in the manor. Finally, under the stares of dozens of people, the garage and the cars were turned to scraps. Fuck. Why doesn't that asshole die? Talist was drowning in pain. Suddenly, a car drove in from outside, and a few people alighted. Mr. Talist, we are from the FBI. This is an arrest warrant. You're suspected of contract killing, frame-up, and attempted murder. We're arresting you. Chapter 687 Brewing. Mr. Talist, the situation is really bad now. The police has important evidence, including the transfer record, audio recording, and tainted witnesses. Talist's personal lawyer looked at him. What's going on? The accuser is an Asian man. He called the cops and requested compensation of $1 million. Chen Zhao's face popped up in Talist's mind. Mr. Talist, I need to ask you some questions now. Only you and I know about this conversation. No third person will know. Did you send those people or not? Talist's eyes flickered. He hesitated and still couldn't give a straight answer. Mr. Talist, this affects the final result in court, the lawyer said. After a pause, Talist nodded. Yes. What exactly did you do? They're from the drug squad, and they'd worked with me many times before. I had them go to the Asian's house and put a bag of drugs there. If the Asian fought back, they could shoot him directly. Okay, I understand. The lawyer thought for a moment and nodded. The evidence is really bad for you now, Mr. Talist. You should get ready to settle this outside court before it starts discussions, or the procuratorate gets involved. Talist's expression grew even uglier, and he clenched his fists. There's no other way. If you can help me win this lawsuit, I can pay you even more money. Don't make me surrender to that Asian. They have the most direct evidence. If the evidence is revealed, Talist's expression changed. If the evidence was revealed, then his company's shares would be affected drastically. Those shareholders would devour him. Help me contact that Asian right now. We can settle it. As long as he cancels the accusation, I can pay him double the amount of money. What if he refuses to compromise? Find someone to take him out, Talus said through clenched teeth. No, kill the people beside him first. I remember he has a pretty girl. Find some people to go and take a video. Neither Talus nor the lawyer realized there was a poisonous snake curled up in the shadows of the room. Kate, I have an audio recording and a video here. Can you find a TV channel to broadcast it? You finally decided to uncover supernatural powers? Chen Zhao rolled his eyes. He knew that Kate was interested in the supernatural world. However, Kate was concerned about Chen Zhao, and she didn't have any evidence, so she never mentioned it. It's not supernatural stuff, but I'm sure you'll be interested. Chen Zhao sent the audio and video to Kate. When she got it, she opened the folder to see some audio recordings and videos. David walked over, putting a hand on Kate's back. Kate, it's so late. Why aren't you sleeping? Chen sent you a file. Fuck, he's secretly sending you stuff. Does he like you? Kate elbowed David's crotch. You asshole, do you know what you're saying? He's your friend. Fine, I'm just kidding. Kate opened the video. It was Talus' conversation with the lawyer. After Kate and David finished the video, David lost his temper. What police station is that asshole at? I'm going to go kill him. Sit down. This has nothing to do with you. Ignore it. Kate opened another video. It was the testimony of a bearded man with a police emblem. David was furious. That bastard Chun. Why didn't he notify me as soon as he ran into this problem? Because of last time. David always felt like he owed Chen Zhao. Kate glanced at him. He knows that you'll have this kind of reaction, so he didn't tell you. Otherwise, who knows what you'd do? But I know now. This case has already been set. If you attack this Talus personally, things will change. You better not do anything stupid. So I can't do anything now? David asked, frustrated. I can do it. Did you forget what my job is? Kate was now the queen of journalists in L.A. She didn't give herself the title. Other journalists had given it to her. The first time that sent her to the headlines was the night she was attacked by the Mexican gang at sea. Apparently, a film company had bought the rights and turned it into a movie that would screen in July. That event made Kate quite famous in her field. It also turned her from a nameless news writer into a famous reporter. But what really shot her to fame was that hotel hostage event. The crime organization had held hundreds of people hostage, and Kate had recorded most of it. This also won her the honor of Newsman of the Year. Almost all media and reporters in L.A. had to be friendly with her. She may not be rich, but she was about as powerful as a politician. In fact, even politicians didn't dare to offend her. Kate immediately took out her phone and called other media people. Hey Juan, give me 10 minutes of your noon news tomorrow. Kate, I'm not in charge of that. Tomorrow's news has already been determined. Fine. Seems like you don't want breaking news. That's okay. What? Wait. You have breaking news again? Okay. I'll let the producer know. After arranging with the TV channel, Kate called a friend at another channel. 123. She also called L.A. Times, her old employer. Even though she wasn't the news editor anymore, her word was probably more powerful than the editor. In addition to the set paper every day, the L.A. Times would also print extra if there was breaking news. When Kate called the executive, he agreed quickly. Thousands of bombs exploding at the same time was incomparable to all of them exploding at the same time. While Kate was preparing, Chen Zhao was also carrying out his plan. Johnny, come to my house tomorrow afternoon. Come no matter what else you have going on. Can you tell me why? Wine tasting. Chapter 688. Then Chen Zhao informed Del, Rasfa, Steven and Zola. These 5 were the richest people Chen Zhao knew in Los Angeles. They were also the people he could invite the most. Chen Zhao's attitude was tough. It was also his first time using such a tone. At noon that day, Risfar brought his family over. Chun. Risfar gave Chunjiao a hug. Just then, White Ma came over. He also gave Risfar a hug. Risfar was overjoyed. Haha. Risfar laughed. Chun, did you see that? It's the first time Black Ma gave me such a warm hug. Chunjiao rolled his eyes. Look at how happy you are. Did you see your laugher? It must be very sad right now. Laura also walked over and kissed Chunjiao's cheek. There were many types of kisses with different meanings. For example, blessing, farewell, or comfort. It was also suitable for kissing. Of course, Chunjiao and Laura's face-to-face etiquette was something that only close friends or relatives would do. Chun, do you remember the first time Laura kissed you? You almost fell to the ground in fear? Risfar mocked Chunjiao. Of course Risfar could understand. After all, Chunjiao was born and raised in China. He wasn't familiar with Western etiquette. Vera and Ronnie had already charged in and started torturing the family pets. Laura could only smile apologetically. Chunjiao shrugged nonchalantly. With their lethality, even a little bit of torment might not be enough to make the princess feel any pain. Not long after, Del arrived. Of course, Fisher had also come. The 3 demon kings were gathered. White Ma pounced at Del again and gave him a hug. This made Del very happy. Then Stephen, Rasfa and Zola came too. Chunjiao introduced them to each other. The wine tasting officially began. In order to gather them together today, Chunjiao had specially mixed a few different flavors of wine. Fuck, Chun, are you really a doctor? I think you should go make wine. You can definitely become the best winemaker on this planet, Rasfo exclaimed. Of course, Chunjiao didn't think that he was that amazing. He only had the advantage of environment, materials, and time. This was something no other winemaker could compare to. Other than that, Chunjiao wasn't much stronger than them. When I get back, I'll smash all the wine in the cellar. Risfar drank a mouthful of wine greedily. I also feel that there's no need for my wine cellar to exist. White Ma had given each of them someone else's wealth. Actually, in terms of personal wealth alone, Risfar could probably afford it. However, this was not safe. If he had too much wealth, there would be unpredictable consequences. This wasn't what Chunjiao wanted, so he invited everyone here. This wine tasting event was just an excuse. Before leaving, Chunjiao gave each of them a bottle of wine. Chunjiao hugged and said goodbye to everyone. Chun, when's your next wine tasting? When Steven's movie is a hit. Fuck, you just don't want to. Steven had gotten over it these past few days. He had already accepted his failure. Or rather, he had learned to admit it. After all, this matter was unavoidable. Not necessarily. Chunjiao chuckled. Even if the whole world doesn't believe you, I still believe that you're the best director in the world. I'll try to make the next successful movie, Steven said. Then I'll let you hold the wine tasting. Chunjiao sent them off one by one. Zola and Rasfa sat in the car. Rasfa's phone suddenly rang. Rasfa's assistant said hurriedly, Mr. Rasfa, where are you now? Please return to the company immediately and host the temporary board meeting. Huh? What's going on? Who started the board meeting? Why don't I know? Rasfa felt uncomfortable. After all, he was the biggest shareholder of PLM, but he didn't know about the board meeting at all. Was it that asterisk Shoal Talist who started it? If he was the one who started it, then it was most likely directed at him. It's the unanimous decision of the shareholders. Your phone was turned off earlier, so we couldn't contact you. What's going on? Look at today's news, Rasfa said to Zola. Zola, take out your phone and look at today's news. Here's a piece of news. According to reliable sources, PLM's second biggest shareholder, Talist, is suspected of murder for hire, malicious framing, and attempted murder. He's currently in police custody, and his bail is as high as $150 million. Both Rasfa and Zola were shocked. Shock was written all over their faces. Talist was Rasfa's biggest enemy in PLM. The two had been fighting openly and secretly for decades. This is a video, the host continued. It's been verified by experts. It hasn't been edited or modified. The conversation between Talist and the lawyer, as well as their conversation, was recorded. Rasfa and Zola kept watching the video. Then the second video came. It was a bearded man's confession. The same thought popped up in both of their minds. Talist was done for. Dad, who exactly did Talus defend? In this video, Talus said that his enemy is an Asian. It can't be Chun, right? Rasfa said uncertainly. I'll go investigate right now, Zola said. I'll go to the company for a board meeting first, Rasfa said. What if it's really Chun? Of course we'll be on Chen's side. Of course. No, Zola said. Both of us owe Chen so many favors. Shouldn't we do it better? That's right, Chen said. What do you want to do? If Talus wants to get out, he'll have to pay a sky-high bail. He definitely doesn't have that much cash right now, so he'll have to gather cash. What does he have to do? Sell his shares? Yes. We'll think of a way to lower the company's stock price. Then we'll use this incident to make the stock price fluctuate for a short period of time. Then we'll buy Talus shares. Rasfa chuckled. Zola was indeed his daughter. That's not all. After he's bailed out, we'll create public opinion and force him to flee America. Chapter 689. Chen, I just saw the news. Don't worry. I'll get revenge for you. Risfar had just seen the news. Johnny, I don't need your help. You saw it too. I can do it myself. If you told me this beforehand, I could send him to the gallows, Risfar said. Now, I can only make him go bankrupt. What are you going to do? Chen Zhao was surprised. Was this black mine white ma's ability? It's simple. I've investigated his businesses. There are a few large companies. I just need to buy his companies and mess up the accounts. Then, I can sue him for fraud and ask for compensation. Risfar made it sound very simple, as though it was a piece of cake for him. However, Chen Zhao felt that it wasn't simple at all. Chen Zhao couldn't understand the games of the rich at all. Of course we'll split the profits, Risfar said. Just treat it as that bastard's compensation to you and Fei Lai. Johnny, I don't want a single cent, Chen Zhao said. What's yours is yours, Chen Zhao said. I just want him to go bankrupt. I don't need anything else. After Stephen left Chen Zhao's house, he went straight to his studio. Although he admitted defeat verbally, he still hoped to try harder. Not for anything else, but for what Chen Zhao had said to him. Even if the whole world doesn't believe you, I still believe that you're the most outstanding director in the world. To Stephen, this sentence was a huge morale booster. Just then Stephen's phone rang. Stephen, did you know? Your friend seems to be in trouble, Halifa Oliver said into the phone. My friend? You mean Chen? What trouble is he in? He seems to have solved it himself, Halifa Oliver said. Halifa Oliver said. It's PLM's second largest shareholder and publicity director, Talus. He sent Talus to prison. To be honest, I admire your little friend. He actually has direct evidence. If Talus is sent to court this time, he might be locked up for 10 years. What exactly happened? It's like this. Halifa told him what she knew. Most of it was from the news, but she also did some research on her own. Therefore, they knew more than ordinary people. A murderous look appeared on Stephen's face. However, after the anger, he felt discouraged, because he found himself unable to do anything. Oliver, I need you to help me. Oh, how do you want me to help you? A few years ago, I heard that Talus was doing some illegal business. If you have channels, help me investigate it. And then, I want Talus to spend the rest of his life picking soap in prison. You and that Chinese guy are just friends, right? No, we're not ordinary friends. Then why should I help you? If you help me this time, I can promise you one thing. Any condition? Yes, I will agree to any condition as long as I can do it. That's what you said. Fuck. How did this happen? How did this happen? Talus was furious. He pointed at the lawyer. Was it you? Was it you? Mr. Talus, now that I've lost my law license, do you think I have to let go of your millions of dollars and let myself fall into a maelstrom? I'm just here to inform you that I'm no longer your lawyer. I don't need you. Fuck off. Talus roared, unable to contain his anger. Talus, I've worked for you for so many years. I think it's best for you to plead guilty now and get the forgiveness of the jury and the victim to reduce your sentence. I won't listen to you. I won't go to prison. Talus's face was hideous. Fuck off, far away. I'm a billionaire. The lawyer shook his head and did not say anything else. Although his lawyer's license had been revoked, as a bystander, he could see things more clearly than in the past. This incident was like a whirlpool that kept pulling Talist into the abyss. However, as an insider, Talist was like a drowning person. He kept struggling, seizing every opportunity to escape the whirlpool. In reality, the more he struggled, the deeper he would sink, until he was beyond redemption. The entire the entire United States was shocked. That was because this incident was simply too vile. Everyone in America was scolding Talist. There were even people in Los Angeles who asked for Talist to be severely punished. If it was just the previous crime, it might not have caused such a huge uproar. What really pushed Talist into the abyss was the video of his conversation with the lawyer. That was a crime that could not be denied. Not only did Talist not repent, he even wanted to silence the witness and hurt the victim again. Talist had already been nailed to the pillar of shame, becoming the shame of America. Talist spent a few days in detention, although it was a single cell, it was hell for him. He did not want to stay here for a second longer. He had to get out. This wasn't a place he should be. But it wasn't easy to gather bail money, because the impact of this incident was too great. Coupled with his wealth, his bail was shockingly high. A bail of $150 million was the third highest in history. Of course, Talist was not happy about this record at all. Even he could not fork out the money directly. He could only sell PLM shares at a low price to gather the bail money. But because of his influence, PLM's stock price did not recover. In just a few days it fell by 30%. Moreover, with the public's opinion, PLM's stock price continued to plummet, falling by 10% every day. Talist felt that if he did not sell the shares now, they might rot in his hands. In the past, there was no way Talist wouldn't be able to tell that something was wrong. But now Talist had lost his mind long ago. He just wanted to get out of the detention center as soon as possible. He did not want to sleep on a bed harder than a rock, or eat food more disgusting than pigs feed. Chapter 690. The Big Six in Hollywood, like PLM, had a very solid structure and foundation. It was rare for the share price to fluctuate greatly. If a super blockbuster was released and became a hit, the share price wouldn't rise more than 5%. Of course, 5% was considered a huge fluctuation in the stock market. It was almost impossible for a shareholder's scandal to cause the share price to plummet by more than 50%. Anyone with a discerning eye could see that someone was manipulating things from behind the scenes. But Talist, who was usually a smart person, seemed to be possessed at the moment. He actually didn't see the problem. Someone was clearly taking advantage of the situation, but he didn't realize it. As the second largest shareholder of PLM, Talist owned 15% of the company's shares. As the biggest shareholder, Rasva only held 24% of the shares. The shareholder structure of a company like PLM was very complicated. There could be more than 100 shareholders. Those with more than 1% of the shares were considered major shareholders and had the right to attend shareholder meetings. PLM's market value used to be $12 billion, but the share price fell by 50% in just a few days. At this rate, the wealth of all PLM shareholders would disappear by $6 billion. Talist told his assistant to sell all the shares. Keeping them would only cause the share price to fall even more. Rasva finally made a move and bought all Talist's shares. At the same time, he established his identity as the largest shareholder of PLM. $900 million was transferred into Talist's bank account. Talist also signed the share transfer contract in the detention center. While Talist waited patiently for his assistant to bail him out, he suddenly received news. Suddenly, he received news that his assistant, who had served him for 12 years, had disappeared. At the same time, the money in his bank account was transferred to dozens of anonymous bank cards. Even Talist was dumbfounded by the series of dazzling moves. Talist didn't expect that he would be betrayed by his most trusted subordinate. His assistant knew him too well. He knew the password to Talist's bank card. He also knew the safety pin of his bank card. The so-called safety pin referred to the limit of a single transfer. If it exceeded a certain amount, the safety pin would be triggered. The bank would immediately monitor where the money went and freeze the card if there was any danger. But as long as it didn't exceed the safety pin, the bank would think it was normal. Moreover, Talus was in the detention center now and didn't know what was going on outside. If Talus could see his phone now, he would definitely see countless transfer messages. His assistant didn't leave him a single cent. He took the money and disappeared completely. Talus was still in the detention center now. His mind was blank. I'm going to kill him. I'm going to kill that bastard. That bastard who betrayed me. Talus roared crazily. Haha, that assistant is really capable. What's his name? Rasfa laughed so hard that tears came out of his eyes. When one was unlucky, even water could fill the gaps between one's teeth. I think he's Quillian, Zola said with a smile. Right, Talus said with a smile. It's already starting to recover. We just need to throw out a few more good news, and the news of Talus being kicked out of the board of directors. The company's stock price will soon return to normal. Talus has been smart his whole life, but in the end, he was betrayed by his own assistant. I really don't know what to say about him. All right, we don't have to continue with our plans. I heard that Talus has started selling his other businesses. Oh, is someone buying them? Yes, we've seen him too. He's Risfar, the one we met at Chen's place. Him? Whose side is he on? Rasfa asked. He's buying properties that have problems with Talus' management. What does that mean? What else could it mean? After buying those companies, he messed up the accounts, and then got Talus to compensate. What can Talus compensate with now? He can only compensate him with his remaining businesses. I didn't expect him to be so ruthless. He can even think of such a dirty move. Talus was like a drowning man. He sold his businesses like crazy to raise money. It didn't matter. He had a lot of assets, and still had a chance to make a comeback. As soon as he got out of prison, he would catch his enemies and traitors, and throw them into the sea. Talus, someone wants to see you. The guard walked in and informed Talus. Talus combed his slightly messy hair, and walked out of the cell with his head held high. Seeing the person sitting at the table outside, Talus immediately walked up with a smile. This wasn't the first time this person had come. Every time, he came to discuss and buy his businesses. Talus had learned his lesson. He wouldn't let anyone else handle his businesses. If he wanted to buy the property, he could do it himself. Hi, Mr. Fankla. You're interested in my company again? You know that they're all high-quality businesses. If I didn't need money urgently, I wouldn't sell them. However, Fankula's expression was cold. Mr. Talus, I'm now officially filing a complaint against you. Your company's actual situation is completely inconsistent with the contract. I'm asking you to compensate me. Of course, you can refuse, but I'll apply to the court for enforcement. I'll freeze and auction your company as compensation. What? Wait. Mr. Fankla, did you make a mistake? I didn't. You can look at the accounts. Talus picked up the books and flipped through them. The more he read, the more shocked he became. According to the records, it meant that he had made up his assets and inflated the market price. He was suspected of fraud. Mr. Talus, you can either compensate me $110 million now, or I'll apply to the court directly. But by then, your bail will be much higher. Talus was on the verge of collapsing. He had almost gathered enough bail. Did he have to compensate so much? It's fake. It's impossible. Talus vomited blood in anger. Why did he always encounter such unlucky things? Why was this happening? It was as if the whole world was against him. Chapter 691. After Fankula came out of the police station, he took out his phone. Boss, he already signed it. Investigate how many assets he has left. Boss, according to my investigation, he and his son have less than $1 million. That much? Risfar was surprised. Talus had nearly $3 billion. In just a few days, he was only left with $1 million. How was that a lot? If Talus' brain was normal and rational, he wouldn't go bankrupt. He wouldn't go bankrupt either. For example, his PLM shares had directly reduced the market price by half. Another example was the $900 million that his assistant had cheated out of him. Based on the current supervision of the banks, Under normal circumstances, even if the owner of the money was in prison, he wouldn't be able to move the money. But this was what had happened. Talus looked like he was possessed by bad luck. Think of something else. I promised my brother that I'll make Talus bankrupt. Do you know what that means? It means that I won't have a single cent left. Fine, I'll think of something. Fankula was helpless. After a few days, the incident's popularity gradually died down. However, at that moment, another piece of explosive news appeared. Talus was suspected of producing and selling drugs. This news wasn't just for publicity. It also listed a lot of evidence. Talus had started his business selling drugs. It hadn't stopped all these years. Moreover, even a witness had come out. The fire that hadn't completely extinguished was ignited again. Stephen looked at the news. He took out his phone and called Halifa Oliver. Oliver, thank you. Remember your promise. I'll remember, Stephen answered honestly. As expected, Talus once again became the target of criticism in America. Especially in Los Angeles, there were hundreds of people marching every day. They wanted the government to sentence Talus to death. Chen Zhao received a call. Mr. Chen, I'm Mr. Talus' lawyer. Chen Zhao was quite surprised. Ever since he crippled a lawyer, someone was actually willing to be Talus' lawyer. Oh, and then, Mr. Talus is willing to compensate you $1 million. He hopes you can drop the charges. Hehe, do you think that's possible? The lawyer was also having a headache. He hadn't volunteered to be Talus' lawyer. He was appointed by the court to give it to Talus. Even if he was God, it was impossible for him to overturn this ironclad case. It was one thing to lose a lawsuit. Most importantly, the risk of being Talus was too high. It seemed that anyone who became Talus' lawyer would be public enemy number one. Even his wife started shivering when she found out that he had become Talus' lawyer. The lawyer had never felt so stifled before. He just wanted to get this lawsuit over with. No matter what, he just wanted it to end as soon as possible. Fortunately, Talus had basically given up struggling. However, Talus didn't want to die. His current crime could very well land him on the gallows. There are very few people on death row in California each year. However, the Talus incident this time was too big of a deal. It seemed that the people were waiting for the judiciary to give them an explanation. It was very likely that he would get a share of the death penalty this year. In the United States, the process of a death penalty trial was extremely complicated. The whole process could take years. However, Talus really didn't have the courage to gamble. He knew that he couldn't get out, but he still didn't want to die. He didn't want to hear that he was going to be executed. So he just wanted Chen Zhao to drop the charges. That way his crime would be lighter. Perhaps he could avoid the death penalty. After hanging up, Chen Zhao stood up and stretched. Looks like I should go see him. Chen Zhao went to the detention center. Talus really came to see him. In just 10 days, Talus seemed to have aged 20 years. In just 10 days, Talus seemed to have aged 20 years. Of course, Chen Zhao wouldn't care about Talus. He wasn't here to comfort Talus. Talus looked at Chen Zhao with a complicated gaze. He hated Chen Zhao. It was unavoidable. But he still wanted to beg Chen Zhao. He seemed to be dreaming that Chen Zhao would let him go because he was pitiful. Mr. Talus, look. Do you remember what I told you last time? With a bright smile, Chen Zhao looked at Talus. As long as it's a war, it's possible to lose. Mr. Chen, you win. You see, I'm not young anymore. I don't want to fight with you anymore. Please, let me go this time. I promise. I will never appear in front of you again. Sorry, I can't agree. Why do you think I worked so hard? Grinning, Chen Zhao looked at Talus. I spent a lot of effort to make you go bankrupt. You? Talus froze. He'd never connected Chen Zhao to his shrinking assets. He knew the whole story. He didn't believe that Chen Zhao had anything to do with it. Remember the black wolf that stared at you that day? Chen Zhao grinned. It devoured your wealth. You. Talus stood up abruptly. His body started trembling. Every night he would have the same dream. A black wolf was gnawing away at his flesh. Furthermore, each dream was connected to each other. Every time he dreamt, he could see the flesh and blood on his body diminishing. Hell isn't far from you. Seeing Talus fall to the ground, The guards hurried over to check and save him. Chen Zhao stood up and left with a smile. Just then his phone rang. Hey Chen, let's go watch a movie tonight. What movie? Of course it's Mr. Steven's Sea Patrol. Don't tell me you forgot that today is July 1st, Friday. Huh? Steven's movie is playing today? Yeah. I'll go buy the tickets now. After Fei Lai got off work, she went straight to the cinema. The two watched the movie hand in hand. Chen Zhao wasn't a film critic, but he enjoyed watching it with great interest. Chen, do you think it's good? However, Chen Zhao was still a bit unhappy that his supporting character died in the arms of Fei Lai's actor. The plot was far from what he'd expected too, but as Steven's friend, he had to go against his conscience even if it was a bad movie. Plus, he didn't think it was bad. Of course it's good. Look at how touching the last scene is. I'm crying. What a bad movie. I can't believe Steven would make such a bad movie. I'm so disappointed. An audience member cursed behind Chen Zhao's back. Chapter 692. Are you blind? That's a bad movie. You can even say it's the worst movie of the year. It's really good. I think you're just nitpicking. Idiot. Fuck. Chen Zhao swung his fist. The person was hit. Immediately, he charged over and started a fight with Chen Zhao. Fei Lai covered her face and watched speechlessly as Chen Zhao wrestled with a stranger. Then the theater called the police. Chen Zhao, Fei Lai, and the audience member were sent to the police station. Then Chen Zhao paid $100 and settled. Chen Zhao didn't say anything on the way. It was just embarrassing, really embarrassing. He'd gotten into a fight with a stranger for no reason. Even if you want to support Steven, you shouldn't do it like this. Fine. What else can I do? I'm going to book 10 shows tomorrow. Oh right. I forgot. When they got home, Fei Lai saw that Chen Zhao still hadn't gone to sleep. Instead, he kept typing on his computer. What are you doing? I'm on Rotten Tomatoes. I saw someone badmouthing Steven's movie. Fei Lai didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She rarely saw Chen Zhao so serious about something. Time to sleep. Wait. I'm going to scold him until he cries. Fei Lai scooted over and saw Chen Zhao type a line. Kid, give me your address if you dare. I'll beat you to death. Chen, have the underlings watch Rotten Tomatoes for you. They have more people. It'll be more efficient than you alone. Oh right. Chen Zhao immediately jumped off the bed with his computer. Chen Zhao called the underlings over. Keep an eye on it. If anyone says bad things about the movie, scold them back. Just then Steven called. Chen, are you asleep? No. Steven, I watched your movie today. It's really good. I'm sure the box office will explode. Trust me. Steven smiled bitterly. Did you like it? Very, very much. Chen Zhao answered seriously. I'm going to watch it again tomorrow. No need. I'll give you the source file. You can watch it as many times as you want. Steven sent the file to Chen Zhao. Generally speaking, if the source files of a movie were to be leaked, it would greatly affect the box office. No matter how close they were, it was impossible for them to send the source files to each other. But Steven had obviously given up. Of course, he also believed that Chen Zhao wouldn't give the source files to others. This was his trust in Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao was speechless. Then Steven hung up. Chen Zhao glanced at the underlings beside him. Watch the movie and find the essence of it. That way, your cursing back will be more realistic. After midnight, Steven still didn't leave the studio. Steven hadn't left the office all day. Steven rubbed his forehead. Yu Wenhui's eyes flickered as she approached Steven. Mr. Steven, the box office for Friday is out. How much is the box office? Yu Wenhui was speechless for a long time. Tell me I can handle it. I've already mentally prepared myself. 45 million US dollars for the first game, and 8 million US dollars for Friday. Steven's heart sank, even though he was mentally prepared. However, this number was still lower than he had imagined. So low. Are you sure? No, I've already verified it 3 times, Yu Wenhui answered. What's the rating on Rotten Tomatoes? Rotten Tomatoes only has a 5 rating. Okay, I got it. It's late. You can go back now. Steven's voice was very low. Steven felt all his strength leave him. When Yu Wenhui left the office, she heard the sound of something being smashed. That voice made her tremble with fear. Why is it like this? Why is it like this? Stephen vented his anger on the computer, the bookshelf, the mug. Everything became the target of his anger. After more than 10 minutes, Stephen finally got tired and stopped. Then he started to tidy up the messy office. Stephen is a man of strong self-esteem. One could say that he was someone who cared about his face. No matter how heavy his heart was, he wouldn't let others see it. Stephen squatted down and picked up the broken pieces on the floor. Just then, something slipped out of Stephen's shirt pocket. Ding, huh? Stephen remembered that it was the lucky coin Chen Zhao had given him. Stephen reached out to pick it up and accidentally touched the broken pieces. Ah! Stephen's hand shrank back. It was already bleeding. A thought suddenly appeared in Stephen's mind. He reached out to pick up the lucky coin, and then for some reason, he smeared the blood on it. But the next moment Stephen found it funny. At the moment, in an ordinary house, a fat man was typing away at the computer. Graham, it's time to sleep, Graham's mother called. Mom, wait a little longer. I'll sleep soon. Don't be too late. Graham continued typing crazily. There's nothing to say. Stephen's new movie Sea of Wrath is a complete failure. As soon as he posted, there was a reply. That only means you're an idiot. You don't understand movies at all. I don't understand Sea of Wrath. That kind of crappy movie doesn't need brains at all. You're the one who's brainless. The movie's structure is clever. First, four bank robbers appear. Actually, the camera is hinting that one of them is in the bank too. It's the bank manager who got shot. Where's the hint? The bank manager has a total of 3 minutes. 30 seconds are spent on the phone. It looks like he's calling his wife, but he's actually saying something like, I'm fine. That's the first sentence. It's actually hinting that the robbers can start moving. The second sentence is, I'll be home at 5. It's actually saying that there are 5 security guards in the bank, and Graham looked at the reply and started recalling the movie he'd watched today. Vaguely, it did seem to be like what the post said, but Graham couldn't remember it clearly. If it was really like what the post said, he had to watch the movie again tomorrow. Graham immediately booked tickets for tomorrow's movie online. Because of the post, Graham couldn't sleep for the entire night. The movie kept replaying in his mind. Early in the morning, Graham went to the cinema. I want to see if I'm wrong or if that person is just spouting nonsense. Chapter 693. Cam watched the opening of the movie. As expected, the scene in the movie was connected to the content of the post last night. Cam's mind became clearer and clearer. Oh my god, it was really like what the post said. It wasn't that the movie was bad. It was that he didn't understand the movie at all. Moreover, every detail of the movie was closely connected. Every scene, even every close-up, actually had a hidden meaning. However, after watching it again, Cam realized that there were still many things that he didn't understand. No, I have to watch it again. Cam watched it again, but he still didn't understand. There were a few more people in the audience this time, and when the audience left, Cam heard someone say that the movie was bad, and he instantly became angry. You don't understand the movie at all. What? You said that I don't understand the movie? Don't you know that I'm a professional film critic? You're a film critic? Come, let me tell you the real mystery of the movie. There were also a few onlookers surrounding Cam and the film critic, listening to Cam's explanation. For example, that killer whale actually mutated because the Mexicans randomly dumped toxic waste. On the surface, it doesn't seem to explain the killer whale's origin at all, but in fact there are hints. The film critic was stunned by Cam's words. Seeing that Cam stopped, he couldn't help but feel a little anxious. Continue. I only understand this much now. I want to watch it again. Then I'll watch it again. Let's watch it together. I want to see what details I missed. The surrounding audience also expressed that they wanted to watch the movie again. After watching it once, these people actually weren't satisfied. No, I found more things again. The more I understand, the more secrets I find in this movie. I suddenly realized that the main character is actually the villain. Huh, why do you think so? Some hidden details. I don't know if I saw it wrong. The few of them gathered together, and began to discuss crazily one after another. Look, someone is saying that the movie is bad. Fuck these idiots. Don't they use their brains to watch movies? Graham yelled. No, I can't let them slander director Steven's masterpiece. This is director Steven's masterpiece, his painstaking work. No one is allowed to insult this masterpiece. Graham had apparently forgotten that he had been one of them last night. That's right. We can't let them tarnish such a masterpiece. The film critic nodded. I suddenly realized that I haven't seen enough. I still want to savor it carefully to see if there are any details that I have missed. Me too. It's so enjoyable. This movie is so wonderful. At first, I thought it was a bad movie, but it turned out to be a masterpiece. Then I thought it was a gunfight movie, but when I watched it for the second time, I realized it was a police movie. And when I watched it again, I realized it was a suspense movie. On the fourth time, I realized it was an environmental movie. And on the fifth time, I realized it was actually a human exploration. When I watched it again, I realized it was a sci-fi movie. Graham wiped the sweat from his forehead. He had overworked his brain. From morning to afternoon, he watched it 5 or 6 times in a row. He opened his Rotten Tomatoes account and found that someone had replied to his post. I just watched Sea of Fury a few times. I realized that what the original poster said was true. It really is a masterpiece. Is it really that good? It's a very magical movie. Every time I watch it, it's a new experience. Those who don't have enough brains recommend not watching it. That's right. I agree with the original poster. I watched it 3 times today, and I realized that every time I watched it, it was like exploring a new field. It's hard to believe that there is so much hidden information in a movie that is less than 120 minutes long. Director Steven is indeed Director Steven. I think this is his masterpiece. No, I have to watch it again. Graham had completely transformed from a troll to a fan of Steven, and he was the craziest kind. As long as he saw someone badmouthing Sea of Fury on the website, he would rush up like a fanatic. Then, he would tell them about his experience and some of the details that he had understood. Is it really that good? I watched it too. I didn't feel anything at all. Idiots can't tell. It's normal. Even if you watch it 100 times, you still won't understand. I'm going to watch it again right now. I don't believe that there are so many hidden elements in this movie. 2 hours later, the person replied again. Oh my God, I realized that I'm really an idiot. I actually didn't see the hidden secret. I apologize to Director Steven for my slip of the tongue. Jean Moo, are you guys still posting comments? Master, we've already scolded a lot of people and made them change their minds. Oh really? Let me see. Chun Zhao picked up his computer and browsed through their comments. Then he looked back at Jean and Moo. Is this movie really that magical? Could it be that I'm too stupid to discover Steven's secret? Even Chun Zhao was dumbfounded. Whatever, he would watch it later. Hey, the movie's rating increased a lot. It was 5 yesterday, but now it's 7.5. Just then Chun Zhao's phone rang. It was right. Hey, Chun, what are you doing? Nothing. Right, what are you doing? I'm bored. I want to find someone to watch a movie with me. I want to watch Angry Sea Police. Today my student recommended this movie to me like crazy. I watched it and realized that I didn't understand it at all. Was it really that magical? Did he not understand it at all? Then why do you want me to watch it with you? Because I realized that it's actually a horror movie. The hidden information in it gives me goosebumps. Chun Zhao didn't know what expression he should have now. Horror movie? Where did this come from? This is obviously a medium-sized popcorn movie, okay? There is no horror element at all. Well, if the scene of blood splattering during a gunfight between the police and the robbers was considered terrifying. Are you serious? Chun, you told me that you know Director Steven, right? Ask him how much information is hidden in this movie. I can't even eat right now. I want to dig out all the secrets in this movie. Chapter 694. Mr. Steven. Mr. Steven. Good news, good news. Yu Wenhui shouted in surprise as she rushed into Steven's office. Steven frowned. He wasn't in a good state of mind. He hadn't slept at all last night. This morning, he saw a few pieces of news criticizing him. Not only was he in a bad state, but he was also in a bad mood. What is it? Steven sounded a little angry. The rating on Rotten Tomatoes is up. It's 8.1 now. Huh? Why is it so high? Steven asked in surprise. Impossible. He estimated that it would only be 6.0 at most. He wasn't shooting an indie film. How could it be 8.1? Did Rotten Tomatoes make a mistake? Or was Yu Wenhui bullshitting him? Based on yesterday's reviews, the score would only go down in a straight line, not up. It's true. Take a look yourself if you don't believe me. Steven opened Rotten Tomatoes and clicked on his movies page. It was even higher than what Yu Wenhui had said. What was going on? Did someone give him a good review? Steven scrolled down the comments. They were all the same. Director Steven, please accept my apology. Steven continued flipping through the pages, and finally found a serious comment. Then he clicked on the comment. Then he was dumbfounded by what he saw. Was this commenter thinking too much? Were there so many elements in his movie? Were there so many dark lines, bright lines, and hidden plots? Just then, Steven received a call from Rasfa. Steven, you're amazing. You're amazing. How did you do it? What? Rasfa, what are you talking about? I'm talking about your movie. It's amazing, really amazing, Rasfa said excitedly. Rasfa said excitedly. I've watched it 6 times, but it's still not enough. There are too many things hidden in this movie. Tell me, how many things are hidden in it? I guess. It's boring if you say that. It's even more boring if I say it. If you want to know, watch and think for yourself. Okay. I'll keep watching, Rasfa said helplessly. Rasfa said helplessly. Oh, by the way, according to the data from the cinemas, the box office on Saturday has already reached $65 million as of 7 p.m. Huh. So high. For the entire day yesterday, including the foreplay, he only earned a little more than $10 million, right? The box office had reached $65 million by 7 p.m. today? You're not lying to me, right? That's because yesterday's people didn't understand it. Tomorrow, I'll contact a few cinemas and see if we can add more cinemas. After hanging up the phone, Steven sat down on the chair. His mind was in a state of complete emptiness. How could this be? Why did the evaluation of him change so drastically overnight? How did a lousy movie become a masterpiece overnight? The box office had skyrocketed several times. Could it be that he had accidentally filmed it and then edited it in? That was impossible. It might be possible if there were 1 or 2. However, the entire movie was more than 100 minutes long. How could he arrange so much content? On Saturday, Yu Wenhui rushed into Steven's office again. Mr. Steven, today's box office is out. It's $86 million in 24 hours. Steven felt suffocated. $86 million. Even if it was a beyond grade A production, the box office on Friday would probably be around this level. Of course, some movies might be able to break $100 million. However, Sea Patrol was only a low-budget movie, yet it had reached the box office level of a beyond grade A production. On the third day, Sunday, the box office broke $100 million, reaching $101 million. The 3-day box office on the weekend accumulated to $198.5 million. It ranked 5th in the history of the 3-day box office on the first weekend. The top 4 were all beyond grade A productions without exception. The filming cost alone was more than $200 million, and the other promotional costs added up to a monster-level investment of $300 to $400 million. But now, Angry Sea Sheriff had created its own miracle with $50 million. The direction of the media had also completely changed. The media that had previously criticized Steven all changed their tone and began to praise him. After 3 days of excitement, Steven's box office on Monday was out. $99 million. This was a real-world record. The first-day box office record was $99 million. While Sea Cop had a good box office and reputation, the other films were in trouble. Who would have thought that Sea Patrol, which was supposed to be a flop, would reveal its sharp fangs without any warning? Like a monster, It began to rampage through the box office. It was completely out of the norm. Usually, the box office would be halved after the first day. However, Sea Patrol did not follow the norm at all. Everyone seemed to have foreseen the birth of a box office miracle. But now Steven suddenly calmed down. While the outside world was full of praises for him, Steven was extremely calm. He knew what he had done. He also did not think that his movie could really take on so many praises. Steven kept playing with the gold coin in his hand. It was the lucky coin that Chen Zhao had given him. He had been thinking about this question. Everything seemed to have started from this gold coin. Maybe he had guessed wrong. Or maybe it was just a beautiful coincidence. Mr. Steven, it's late. Yu Wenhui knocked on Steven's office door. You can go back first. Steven waved his hand. Then, I'll go first. Yu Wenhui closed the door. She knew that Steven had slept very little these days. The first night was because of the box office failure. The next few days were because of the explosion of the box office. He was so excited that he could not sleep. Steven sat in his office for more than an hour. He did not do anything. Finally, he picked up his phone. Hey, Chen. Fuck, do you know what time it is? Sorry. If there's nothing else, I'll hang up. No, Chen. I used the coin. Oh, you only used it on Saturday? Steven was even more certain that it was really the coin's effect. Chen, can you tell me what happened? You're very strong, Chen Zhao answered confused. What? I'm going to sleep. Fuck. If you hang up, I'll go to your house right now. Chapter 695. For Steven, this was probably the most difficult night of his life. Early in the morning, Steven rushed to Chen Zhao's house. Hey Steven, congratulations on your movie's success. Fei Lai saw Steven walk in. Chen's still sleeping. There's breakfast in the dining room. I think you need it. After breakfast dragged Chen down. I'm going to work now. Thank you. Steven maintained a polite smile and nodded, watching Fei Lai go to work. Okay, he was indeed hungry. Chen Zhao's breakfast had always been delicious. The couple's cooking had always been good. Both Chen Zhao and Fei Lai seemed to be able to enjoy themselves every time they came. Splash. Fuck Steven. I'm going to kill you. Steven tossed the bucket in his hand and turned to run. But Chen Zhao grabbed him and pulled him out of the balcony. Chen, wait, what are you doing? This is the 3rd floor. Chen Zhao didn't care. Hugging Steven, he jumped out. Chen, I'm sorry, wait. Ah, splash. Steven almost peed his pants. But when he entered the water, he could clearly feel Chen Zhao's palm protecting his head. He knew that Chen Zhao wouldn't really hurt him, but he was still furious. If he could beat Chen Zhao, he really wanted to push Chen Zhao into the water. Chen, tell me what happened, okay? I told you, Chen Zhao said calmly. It's all your hard work and a bit of luck. Before coming, Steven had already guessed that Chen Zhao wouldn't say anything. Or rather, he'd use such an ambiguous answer. It was as if he hadn't said anything. Chen, I won't hesitate if you have any requests in the future. What if I want you to change your sexual orientation? Fuck. Are you? Steven almost peed his pants. Chen Zhao gave him the middle finger. Steven continued. Oh, you said you'd have a wine tasting after my movie's success. Wait until I brew some more. You guys drank it all last time. Fine, give me a number. I don't know. Depends on my mood. Are you going back on your word? Your movie has only been released for a few days. Why don't you hold a celebration party after it's released? To be honest, I've never been to a celebration party before. That's good. You must come to the celebration feast. The box office of Angry Sea Police was like a monster going on a rampage. The box office earnings were astronomical every day. 85 million on Tuesday, 73 million on Wednesday, and 69 million on Thursday. On Friday, it rebounded to 80 million, and on Saturday and Sunday, it broke 100 million again. Everyone in Hollywood stared at the box office in shock. This kind of adverse growth in the box office once again broke the next week's box office record. The box office in North America exceeded $800 million. And this was only the second week of the movie's release. On the other hand, the movie released at the same time as Sea of Fury Detective was a disaster. The popularity of Sea Sheriff meant that other movies at the same time were sharing the profits. Even if it was an anime that was released on Friday, it was of a completely different genre and audience, so it was inevitable that it would be affected. For Sea Detective, of course the situation was good, but for other movies, it was a disaster. Because of the influence of Sea Sheriff, PLM's stock soared too. Not only did it return to a high level, but it even broke the previous record. The current North American box office record was $936 million for Star Wars. No one doubted that this record would be broken by Sea of Fury. In fact, on the third day of the third week of Sea Detective, the box office broke the North American box office record. The third week's box office was half compared to the $600 million in the second week. But even so, $300 million was enough to shut everyone's mouth. At this time, everyone in and out of the industry was guessing where this so-called masterpiece of masterpieces would end. $1. $5 billion or $2 billion. This week, it was released in other regions one after another. Although it was not as popular as in North America, it was still very popular. And the rating of Sea of Fury on Rotten Tomatoes had reached an unprecedented 9. No matter in terms of box office or rating, it was already the new king. These 2 weeks, Rasfa's mouth was almost crooked from smiling. His net worth had also skyrocketed with the release of the movie. Of course, the skyrocketing stock prices were only virtual assets to him. They were all immovable assets, and could not be converted into cash. But the share of the box office still made him very rich. Also, the company's management and board of directors had unanimously approved the project for the second movie. According to the normal share of the box office, the investment budget of $50 million would need about $150 million to recoup the cost. However, Steven's movie had exceeded their expectations by far. Even the company's opponents did not dare to talk about changing the director at this time. They even suggested that Steven could shoot the movie however he wanted. There was no upper limit to the budget, and the company would not interfere with the shooting and editing rights. Even the roles were up to Steven. Of course, Steven had to be careful now. He would not agree so quickly. The movie's release made Steven's career reach new heights again. Now the 6 major film companies were all throwing olive branches to him. They were treated well, even better than PLM. Steven would not take on a movie casually. The first thing was the script. "Steven, tell me, what do you want to do for the second movie?" Rasfa knew that the first movie had been deified. The second one had to be Steven. Other directors did not have this ability. They could not even make half of it. Although the first Sea Police had not been released yet, it was already regarded as a Bible by all directors. The text-like layout and jaw-dropping structure were probably something most directors could not study in their entire lives. "Fuck," Steven said. "You don't even have a script now. How can I sign it? I've built up my reputation with so much difficulty. I don't want it to be ruined by the second movie. As for the script, all the screenwriters in the company are working on it. I believe the first draft will be out soon. Let's not talk about the second movie first. Have you decided on the director for Animal Supermarket? Do you want to take it? No problem. I'll tell the board of directors now." "No, didn't Chin tell you?" "He did. Chin told me once. He said that James is a good choice, but Chin is an outsider after all. I haven't decided yet. I think James is good too," Steven said. "You really think James is good? If Chin says so, then he must be good. Even though we're friends with Chin, this is still a work-related matter." Chapter 696. "James, the project for Animal Supermarket is done. You'll be the director from now on." Hearing Steven's words, James was overjoyed. "Ah, thank you, Mr. Steven." James had been admiring Steven for the past few days. He'd thought that he'd learned enough, but now he realized that the gap between him and Steven was too huge. He'd been with Steven the whole time, but he couldn't tell that Steven had hidden tricks in the movie. The truth also proved that Steven was unparalleled in strength. "Don't thank me, thank Chin," Steven said. "Chin fought for this opportunity for you." Yes, I'll thank Chin personally." This was his first time as the main director. He'd obviously pay extra attention and be serious. As a commercial director, the box office was still the deciding factor. Steven didn't need to say much. James was still his assistant. Chen Zhao was also Steven and Rasva's friend, so James didn't dare to underestimate him. Of course, he was also one of the contributors to See Detective. But his presence was also the lowest. After all, people would only remember Steven. Steven was the biggest star of the movie. No matter if it was the male or female lead, none of them could outshine Steven. Speaking of which, almost all the main characters in the movie had hit the jackpot. Especially Yafen. She'd gone from a C-list actress to a box office record holder. To be honest, even Yafen didn't expect it. She still remembered that Chen Zhao was the one who'd recommended her. Otherwise, she definitely wouldn't have become the female lead in Steven's movie. Over the past few days, she'd also entered the ranks of A-list actresses. She didn't need too many movies. Just this one was enough. When the movie had first been released, she'd been criticized badly. They said that she'd ruined Steven's movie, but for some reason, they said that her acting had a deeper meaning. Actually, she didn't know what she'd acted either. But in just one night, she had become an actress with great potential. What happened to being a vase? Right now, Chen Zhao was swallowing a key. What's wrong? What's wrong? As soon as Chen Zhao swallowed the key, he'd feel nauseous and immediately spit it out. Could he only swallow the key for the first time? Do I have to think of another way to get the other keys? Chen Zhao had a headache. Swallowing the key was the weirdest way he could think of. The result was really effective. Could it be that the other keys also had to be obtained in such a strange way? However, Chen Zhao had always been suspicious. What was the use of the first key? First of all, after using the first key, his body's resistance to damage had increased significantly. Secondly, he could breathe underwater. However, he had no idea what to do when he was alone. Chen Zhao suddenly remembered. Eris was now equivalent to half of the Witch Society's library. Perhaps she had more memories of the key. Chen Zhao drove directly to the headquarters of the supernatural organization. However, when he arrived at the headquarters, he realized that everyone was gone. Only Aduz was guarding the door. Aduz, where did they go? Guild leader. They've gone hunting with Gaia. Hunting? What the hell? Did the supernatural organization have any activities that he didn't know about? It's Mr. West's rule. In order to train everyone's combat ability, everyone has to have a certain number of missions and mission success rates every month. Every time they go out on missions, Gaia's success rate is the highest, so they like to hunt with Gaia. Wasn't this just finding a big shot to suck up to? Of course, Gaia's combat ability was great. She was a battle maniac. Chen Zhao had met her when she'd beaten him up. As for the others, Chen Zhao knew them well. If something happened, they'd retreat regardless of whether they could handle it or not. This was their habit. If they were always by Gaia's side, when would they be able to take charge? If they encountered danger, either Gaia or Chen Zhao would do it. Of course, Chen Zhao didn't want this to happen. After all, he was here to be the guild leader, not a fighter. An hour later, everyone returned. Gaia was still injured, but the others were unharmed. Hey, Chen, you actually came to the headquarters today. Gaia greeted Chen Zhao. Chen Zhao looked at Gaia's injuries. What did you encounter? Guild leader, we encountered a very powerful magical creature, West said quickly. And then, we fought it together. West's voice became softer as he looked at Gaia. Chen Zhao looked at Gaia. Is what he said true? Did they really help? Yes, they helped a lot. Gaia was integrating into the group now, so she didn't want to be ostracized. Oh, how's your preparation for that thing? The thing Chen Zhao was referring to was the treasure hunt at sea. Gaia thought for a moment and said, Chen, I still want to become stronger. Oh, you don't have confidence in yourself? I've been following them for the past few days. I realized that even normal situations are too late for me. For example, the magical creature we encountered today. I tried my best but still couldn't defeat it, so I don't know if we'll encounter more trouble at sea. I don't want to be a burden. If I'm just a burden, I'd rather not go. Actually, it wasn't that the other members were sucking up to him. It was just that Gaia had to go every time and take the initiative to fight. Sure, I'll wait for you. Chen Zhao nodded. Gaia's words made sense. They would most likely encounter supernatural powers during this treasure hunt. So Chen Zhao felt that Gaia indeed had to become stronger. Regardless of whether they could find the treasure, at least they wouldn't lose their lives. Alice, do you have any key-related magic books in your brain? Search for key. Chen Zhao looked at Alice. Is this a search engine? Search results. We've found 1,300 pieces of information related to the key, Alice replied. What about key-related magic books? Search results, key magic books? Search results. 326 books related to keys have been found. Get them all out. I need some information. Ah, Alice screamed. Guild leader, are you going to kill me? Why? Chapter 697. Chen Zhao thought about it. I can't bear to. Wah. Alice cried sadly and hopelessly. Forget it, let's take it slow. Give me a book first. Alice cut off another lock of hair. Just like last time, she lit it before Chen Zhao. Then a magic book appeared from the ashes. The members of the association had all seen Alice's spell. Alice was very weak in battle, but she was very important to the association. Chen Zhao looked at the small magic book with disdain. The more body parts Alice cut off, the more important the magic book would be. Most of the books couldn't be taken out now. If Alice had to summon a magic book, she might have to be sacrificed. Alice looked at Chen Zhao timidly, and then covered her hair lovingly. She was afraid that Chen Zhao wouldn't be satisfied with the summoned book, and would cut off more of her hair. What are you looking at? Do I look like such a cruel person? Chen Zhao rolled his eyes. He took the magic book and waved his hand. Kneel down. As if she'd been pardoned, Alice retreated timidly. Chen Zhao flipped through the book and found records about the key. This magic book is a diary. Chen Zhao was very lucky. There was such a message in the magic book. Weiyan, I saw Amy again. She stole my golden key. She also figured out how to use it before me. She started to change. She could sense more elements. Her adaptability to the environment became abnormally strong. Even though I defeated her once again, and threw her into the abyss, it was impossible for me to defeat her. I thought I killed her, but 15 years later, she climbed out of the abyss again. She became someone I didn't know. Her eyes were blind, but her sense of smell and hearing became extremely sharp. She found me. I don't know how she survived in that dark abyss, but I know it must have something to do with the golden key. She became stronger than before, but she was still no match for me. Because in the past 15 years, I have also found a key, a silver key. I also figured out how to use it. This time, I killed her and took the golden key from her again. Chen Zhao finished reading the short autobiography. All of the content was from Wei Yan's point of view. In his autobiography, he also mentioned the person who once owned and used the golden key, Aimi. After using the golden key, Aimi gained a strong ability to adapt to the environment. Chen Zhao's heart skipped a beat. The real use of the golden key was not as he had initially thought, which was that it could only allow him to breathe underwater. Instead, it was the ability to adapt to the environment. In different environments, the body would instinctively produce certain characteristics to adapt to the changes brought about by the environment. There was also the ability to sense elements. Elements were spiritual energy. In other words, he could sense more spirit chi. This was good news. He could speed up his cultivation. However, the golden key did not make a person unkillable. It only improved certain aspects. Moreover, if one was confined in some special and extreme environment for a long period of time, one's body would undergo even more extreme mutations. Chen Zhao felt that this might be the true use of the golden key. However, he was still a little hesitant. Perhaps the records were not complete. Perhaps even the author, Wei Yan, had not discovered the use of the golden key. He had only discovered it from Aimi. He did not completely understand the use of the golden key. At the same time, in the autobiography, Wei Yan also said that he had also obtained a key, a silver key. The silver key also had different abilities. However, the record stopped there. This was the only record in the entire book. There were no more records about the key. It was not that he had gained nothing, but it was limited. Chen Zhao wanted to ask Alice for another magic book. However, Alice would hide far away when she saw him. Looking at Alice's hair of different lengths, Chen Zhao was too embarrassed to ask her for more. Forget it. He would ask her for a magic book when her hair grew longer. Alice, don't run. I don't want your hair. Hearing that, Alice heaved a sigh of relief. President, what's wrong? Keep this bottle of hair tonic. Take good care of your hair. What do you mean? After all that talk, you still want my hair? Alice was so anxious that she was about to cry. If not for the fact that I can't beat you, I really want to die with you. Counseling Center. Hello ladies, it's your turn. Which one of you wants to go in first? The nurse walked up to Charlotte and Cindy. We'll go in together. We both have the same problem, Charlotte answered. Ladies, according to our rules, our attending doctor can only accept counseling and treatment for one person at a time. Charlotte only glanced at the nurse coldly. The nurse's research suddenly lost its color. Let's go in, Charlotte said to Cindy beside her. Margaret was waiting for the next patient to come in, but when the door opened, she realized that two people had come in. Ladies, is there anything I can help you with? Margaret didn't understand why her assistant would let them in. However, since she was already in, she quickly adjusted her attitude. She did not shut the two out. Instead, she had an attitude of since they were already here. Doctor, there's a voice in our heads that keeps going back and forth. Is there any way to make it disappear? Or do you have some medicine that can make us fall asleep quickly? Charlotte and Cindy's mental state was very bad. It seemed like they had not slept for a long time. Are you talking about auditory hallucinations? No, it's not. It's a real voice. Margaret did not mind. Every patient who suffered from auditory hallucinations believed that what they heard was real. You have the same symptoms? Yes. We're troubled by that voice. It keeps calling us. May I ask what your job is? Witches, Cindy replied. Air. You're joking. Charlotte chuckled. Our working environment is rather complicated, so we're tortured by the noise for a long time. We need medicine that can calm us down. Chapter 698. Mr. Stephen, what's your next plan? Plan. I'm waiting for my share of the box office to arrive. Then I'll go to Mara Supermarket in Sacramento and buy their bottle of Daydream, worth $100 million. There was an uproar. Everyone stared at Stephen in disbelief. Some people did not know what Daydream was. Someone next to them immediately explained. In fact, when Mara Supermarket launched the $100 million bottle of Daydream, it caused quite a stir. But the news left as quickly as it came. It did not cause too much of a stir. Most people thought that this was a publicity tactic by Mara Supermarket to please the public. No one really believed in the so-called $100 million wine. No one would really buy it. But now, Stephen was the most famous director in Hollywood. Even some legendary directors, who had been deified, were now saying that they wanted to buy the $100 million bottle of wine. It was definitely explosive news. Mr. Stephen, do you really believe that Mara Supermarket can have a $100 million wine? Most of the people were skeptical about this. For most of the reporters, $1 million or even $100,000 wine was unimaginable. After all, they would never be able to taste their salaries. As for the $100 million wine, it was even more ridiculous in their eyes. Mr. Stephen, how much of the box office revenue will you get this time? This was also what people were curious about. As a legendary director, how much could he get from the box office? Actually, my share of the box office is not much, just 5%. Stephen said with a smile. Unlike most directors, he wouldn't avoid talking about his salary. No one would think that he was asking too much if he said any price. Besides, Stephen's salary was not high in this movie. A 5% share of the box office would be a joke to most film companies. Almost every first-rate director was entitled to such a share of the box office. Compared to Stephen's performance and ability in his own movies, a 5% share of the box office was definitely worth it. Stephen had stated his salary publicly to put pressure on PLM Films. If you know what's good for you, hurry up and give me your share of the box office earnings. Although Stephen and Rasfa were good friends, in terms of profit, Rasfa was a true capitalist, a vampire. Most of the time, film companies would deliberately delay, or even skimp on remuneration, relying on their size and status. In particular, the bigger the company, the more sinister their methods were. For a director of Steven's caliber, the 6 major Hollywood studios wouldn't dare to skimp on his salary. If it had been some other small directors, they would have dragged it on as long as they could and deducted as much as they could. These small-time directors were often angry, but they did not dare to say anything. However, I've been drooling over that bottle of Daydream for a long time, Steven said seriously, because I know where that bottle of wine came from. Unfortunately, I can't get it, so I just hope that I can save enough money to buy that bottle of wine. Steven actually didn't plan on buying the bottle. He was returning the favor by promoting Chenzhou and Mara Supermarket. After all, Chenzhou had done him a great favor this time. He naturally hoped that he could help Chenzhou as well. Now that Steven was in the limelight, his words often represented the truth. The reporters were all stunned. Was that bottle of wine really worth $100 million? Was there some secret that they didn't know? After the interview, all the major media outlets rushed to report it. $100 million wine. A wine even the best director in the world can't drink. The origin of Daydream. The mysterious Daydream. All of a sudden, Mara Supermarket was filled with people. Everyone wanted to see what the bottle of wine that was worth $100 million looked like. However, Daydream was placed in a glass enclosure. There was a 5-meter wide fence around it, and 4 security guards stood at the 4 corners. No one could approach the bottle casually. They could only look at it from afar. Winnip couldn't believe that the great director, Steven, would personally support her supermarket. When he was interviewed by the media, he even mentioned her supermarket's name. Winnip didn't seem to have given Steven any advertising fees, right? Last time when Daydream was born, there was some news. But most of the news was bought by Winnip herself. Thus, her influence was very limited. In just 2 days, the popularity died down. But this time, it was different. Steven personally mentioned Mara Supermarket and Daydream. Now everyone in America was in an uproar. Everyone wanted to see the expensive wine. Steven's influence was definitely not limited to just the entertainment industry. His influence had seeped into every level. Any one of his words would have a huge impact. This also brought a lot of traffic to Mara Supermarket, even though most of them just wanted to see Daydream. But the most important thing for a supermarket was the traffic. This was a real benefit. The supermarket's sales even multiplied. There were even people who flew thousands of miles from other places to Sacramento just to have a look at the sky-high prices of wine. As a result, Mara Supermarket's brand value increased greatly. It even became a famous attraction in Sacramento. Hello, Ms. Winnip. Hello, Mr. Alton. Winnip hadn't expected the mayor of Sacramento, Alton, to come to her. Ms. Winnip, I have something to discuss with you. Please go ahead. You know that Sacramento has always been in a very awkward position. Although it's the state capital of California, in terms of resources and location, it can't compare to San Francisco or Los Angeles. The tourism industry has never had a chance to develop, so I want to discuss with you about Sacramento's tourism industry. What does this have to do with me? Winnip asked. Although he was the mayor, Winnip wasn't afraid of him at all. Her Mara Supermarket was a huge taxpayer in Sacramento. At the same time, the supermarket solved the employment problem of thousands of people. Thus, even the mayor had to be polite to her. I want to use your supermarket's wine and Daydream as a tourism theme and hold an exhibition. Chapter 699. Capitalists of course pursued profit. It was the same for Winnip. They used Daydream as the theme to attract tourists. Even Alton didn't have the right. He had to get Winnip's approval. Second was the exhibition. Daydream had to be loaned out even more. Without Winnip's approval, Alton couldn't do anything. But now Daydream's name was not only in the United States, but also internationally. After all, it was personally praised by the great director Steven. Daydream was also very famous now. With Steven's help and the fame of the sky-high price wine, it was hard not to be famous. It was hard not to be famous. Alton had also noticed this point. During this period of time, Alton had also noticed this point. During this time, the number of tourists in Sacramento had increased by 1,400%. This was a very obvious sign. Of course, it was mainly because there weren't many tourists in Sacramento to begin with. The base was too small, so the sudden increase of tourists by 1,400% didn't change much. As the mayor of Sacramento, Alton had to show some results if he wanted to be re-elected. But Sacramento had always been in an awkward position culturally, politically, and economically. Its culture wasn't as good as Hollywood and Los Angeles, and its economy was several times worse than San Francisco and Los Angeles. And politically, although it was the capital of California, most people didn't know. Everyone even thought that San Francisco was the capital of California. This was very awkward. The city government had always wanted to show Sacramento's position, but the effect was very poor. There was no effect at all. It was different now. Sacramento actually had a famous sky-high price wine. So, Alton wanted to use this sky-high price wine to show Sacramento's position. But this required Winnip's cooperation and help. Otherwise, this plan would just be empty talk. From now on, all tourists who come to Sacramento will know about Mara Supermarket. Of course, Alton didn't just come with a glib tongue. This time he came with a detailed plan. There will also be obvious signs so that tourists who want to shop will choose Mara Supermarket as their first choice. Winnip glanced at Alton. It was indeed a good condition. But this wasn't enough. Winnip said firmly, Mara Supermarket plans to open a third branch in Sacramento. I want the empty space at White Coral Street. Since the old building had just been demolished, the vacant land in White Coral Street was still in the hands of the government. However, a few rich people and real estate developers had already set their sights on that piece of land. Winnip wasn't poor, but she wasn't as rich as a real estate developer. Therefore, if they wanted to fight for that piece of land, they could only get the support of the city government. That's not for me to decide. That piece of land is going to be auctioned. Although Alton was the mayor, he was not a tyrant who could give the land to whoever he wanted. But if you can provide me with an evaluation report, I might be able to do something about it, Alta said. The so-called politics was about constant compromises in exchange for benefits. Normally, if the government owned a piece of land, the highest bidder would get it. However, if another enterprise or company could create more jobs, pay more taxes, or significantly help the local area or the entire city, then the city government could sell the land to the other party at a low price. How confident are you? 60%, no 70%, Alton said. Let me think about it, Winnip said. Actually, she also wanted to discuss with Chen Zhao. Daydream wasn't actually her personal property. According to their initial verbal agreement, Daydream would be lent to Winnip. Winnip would use it to increase the supermarket's reputation and customer flow. Chen Zhao would try his luck to see if anyone was willing to buy the wine. Now that Winnip wanted to use it as a city symbol, it would definitely exceed the scope of their initial agreement. Therefore, Winnip had to discuss it with Chen Zhao. Hey Chen, are you busy? Winnip called Chen Zhao. Yes, I'm busy. What's up? At the moment, Chen Zhao was lying on the internal alchemy, slacking off. He'd planned to cultivate for a while, but after less than half an hour, he started to slack off again. I have a plan. Oh, what plan? Recently, there's been an obvious increase in tourists in Sacramento. Most of them are here for Daydream. So I want to make Daydream an even more famous and well-known brand. Isn't Daydream famous enough now? Daydream does have a lot of fame now, but it's not enough, far from enough. Daydream is only popular now. Once it's over, it'll be much less famous. Then what should we do? If Daydream is connected to Sacramento, it'll be like the Leaning Tower of Pisa in Italy, the pyramids in Egypt, or the Statue of Liberty in New York. Daydream is just a wine. It's a consumable. Can it bear such a big reputation? If someone buys it, how can it bear the reputation? If someone buys one bottle, put another one on it, Winnip said. Also, the more famous it is, the more potential buyers there will be. Okay, if you think this plan works, then I'll listen to you. It's not bad for me anyway. Chen Zhao's ultimate goal was to make money. If he could achieve a win-win situation while making money, he didn't mind letting Winnip benefit too. Daydream. Mattila's eyes lit up as he watched the news on the TV. He looked at the sky-high wine that the security guards were staring at. Matila was the richest man in Sacramento. Everything he enjoyed was the best, including wine. But now, there was actually a bottle of wine in this city that he couldn't get. $100 million for Daydream was also a sky-high price that he couldn't afford. But this didn't mean that he'd give up. In his early years, he'd made his fortune by smuggling firearms. Therefore, he had connections with some international armed forces. The price of hiring an international mercenary group was only a few million US. If he could get the wine for a few million, why would he pay $100 million? He was a capitalist. His principle had always been to get the most benefit with the least cost. Chapter 700. Chen Zhao could clearly feel the increase in his magic power. Even if he was slacking off like this was mainly reflected in his increased cultivation speed. In the past, it would take him more than 10 minutes to finish one breath. But now he could do it in a few minutes. This was the benefit that the golden key had given him. He was more sensitive to spiritual qi. However, there was no standard for magic power. Even if there were levels, they were set by Chen Zhao himself. There were 5 levels: A, B, C, D, and E. But Chen Zhao's magic power had long surpassed the levels he had set. Chen Zhao didn't know how strong his magic power was now. If he didn't have a reference, it would be very difficult to know what level he was at. There were people stronger than Chen Zhao. For example, Beelzebub Zophi in Hell, or Old Turtle in the River Map. They were all stronger than Chen Zhao, but they couldn't be used as reference. They were too strong. Chen Zhao would be asking for trouble if he compared himself to them. It was like comparing one person's height with another. However, if one wanted to compare one's height with a towering tree or even a mountain, it would be like comparing one's height with another. Such a comparison was meaningless. "Master, Mr. James is calling." Just then, the butler's loudspeaker informed Chen Zhao that he had an incoming call. Chen Zhao swam back to shore and had the butler call James back. "Hey James, what's up?" "Chen, I'm here to thank you. Thank you for helping me ask Mr. Rasfa. I'm now the director of Animal Supermarket." "You're welcome. I only said it once." Chen Zhao didn't expect James to really be the director of Animal Supermarket. Chen Zhao had almost forgotten about this. He'd thought that his words wouldn't be of much use. After all, he was an absolute amateur in this area. If it was just an unimportant role, he might be able to help. But this was the director. His words probably wouldn't be of much use. "Mr. Chen, are you interested in playing a role?" "Any role is fine." James paused and added, "Maybe not if it's the main character. I don't have that much power." James was still a newcomer, even though he wasn't young anymore. But in the directing circle, he was indeed a newcomer. Is there anyone who died a horrible death? I want to play someone who died a horrible death. But it shouldn't take more than a minute. If it takes more than a minute, it might take a long time to film." Yes, James didn't even need to think. What was so difficult about that? If Chen Zhao had asked for a second or third man, it would probably take a while. But a minute of footage was not a problem at all. They just had to modify the script a little, or they just had to add a new character. "If you're free, you can come over and pick a character." "When?" "The crew and I are auditioning here today. You can come over if you have time." "I'm bored now. Give me the address." Just then Steven's call came. Steven's tone had been much more relaxed recently. It was completely different from the previous few months of oppression. He would call Chen Zhao every other day to harass him. "Chen, what are you doing?" "I'm going to James's crew. I heard he's auditioning for actors." "Ah, are you going to star in a James movie? Last time, I asked you to be a guest star in my movie, and you rejected me. Why are you acting in a James movie now? Am I not as close to you as I am to James?" "Fuck, why are you being jealous? I'm just killing time. Maybe I'll change my mind when the actual shooting starts. Then I'll go join in the fun." Steven was clearly bored out of his mind recently. He had never acted in a movie before. When Chen Zhao arrived at James's crew, he realized that it was already filled with people. In any case, they were all unfamiliar faces, men, women, old, young, and even children. Just as Chen Zhao was about to walk in, someone stopped him. "Buddy, line up, okay?" The fat guy pulled Chen Zhao back. "I know the director." "Fuck, I know the director too. Go line up." The guy's coarse voice made everyone look at Chen Zhao. "Don't embarrass Asians." Chen Zhao touched his face. "Was my face big enough to represent all of Asia? Fine, I'll line up then." "Buddy, that's right. I heard that this director is Mr. Stephen's personal assistant director." The fat guy patted Chen Zhao's shoulder. Anything that had anything to do with Stephen would become a hot topic. Even Stephen's assistant director was now in high demand. Even though James was still a newcomer in the directing circle, he was still very popular with Stephen's assistant director title. These people might not know James, but most of them were here for Stephen. They felt that they might meet Stephen and be chosen at first sight. Of course, even if they knew that the possibility was very slim. "Buddy, which role are you here to audition for?" the fat guy asked. Usually when a crew announced auditions, they would also release some scripts, lines, and roles. Then, the actors would choose their own roles and prepare. Chen Zhao shook his head. "I don't know. We'll see. You can't do this. It's not professional at all. I'm just here to play. You can't do this either. Since you've decided, you have to be serious and do your best." Chen Zhao looked at the fat guy speechlessly. As long as you're happy. More and more people came for the auditions. There were already 40 to 50 people outside. Chen Zhao had to admit that Stephen's name was really useful. Just then, someone walked out and pointed at the first 20 people in the line. "Come with me. Let's go. It's our turn." The fat guy patted Chen Zhao's shoulder. The auditions now were all for small roles, so they weren't auditioning one by one. They were basically piled up in a large tent, and let the director and the audition director take a look first. Then, the unsuitable ones would be picked out, and the suitable ones would enter the audition. Chen Zhao and the fat guy were quite lucky. They passed the first round easily. Of course, the so-called easily meant that the audition director took a look at them. The passing rate was 50%. Chen Zhao and the remaining dozen people entered the tent. James and a few other role directors and audition directors sat on the side. Chapter 701. Chen Zhao glanced at the fatty. Why did he feel like the guy was even more nervous than him? "Do you need a tissue?" Chen Zhao took out a tissue. "Sure, it's a bit hot today." The fatty wiped his sweat. Chen Zhao stuffed the entire pack of tissues into his hands. "Come up," the casting director called, pointing at the fatty. The fatty secretly mustered his courage and walked up the stage. Then he bowed to James and the others. "Hello, director. I'm Guilu, 30 years old. I'm auditioning for a supermarket cashier role." As he spoke, the plump Guilu began to perform without any physical objects. Just like that, Guilu expressionlessly did the cashier's actions. He scanned the code, took the money and gave the change. "Okay, this one works." James nodded. The other two casting directors nodded as well. Hearing James' words, Guilu perked up. After bowing, he ran back to his seat excitedly. "How is it? Isn't it easy?" Joy had to be shared with someone. Guilu was sharing his joy with Chen Zhao right now. "There are 5 supermarket cashier roles," Guilu said in a low voice. "You can learn from me later. You can definitely do it." In fact, the actors who followed Gu Ai onto the stage also imitated him after seeing Gu Ai's performance. "That asterisk shoal," Guilu said angrily. "He actually copied my method. I didn't agree. He's plagiarizing." Chen Zhao rolled his eyes. How could someone plagiarize something like this? "I curse that he can't pass." Guilu's curse seemed to be working. One of the casting directors shook his head. "He's not creative at all. This one won't do. Next." Seeing that the actor didn't pass, Guilu clenched his fists tightly. "I told you. This kind of uncreative, plagiarizing asterisk shoal can't become a real actor." Chen Zhao glanced at Guilu. "You told me to copy you earlier." But then Guilu looked at Chen Zhao with a worried expression. "This is troublesome. My method just now isn't working. You have to think of something yourself." Don't worry. I'll definitely pass. Chen Zhao patted Guilu's shoulder. This fatty wasn't bad. This was the first time they had met. And he actually knew how to care about her. It's not that easy. This is a movie with a medium investment. Every character is very important. Guilu said. Even if it's a minor character, if they can't display their own characteristics, they will still be eliminated. Chen Zhao still had that nonchalant attitude. Guilu continued to teach Chen Zhao. You need to put away your sloppy attitude. If you want to be an actor, you need to take your job seriously. Guilu continued. Do you know Vincent? Who? Vincent? Chen Zhao was stunned. Was this guy famous now? 2 days ago, Vincent had called him to thank him. Although Vincent only played a role in director Steven's movie for less than 5 minutes, he brought the role to life. Just this role alone contained too much information. It also made Vincent a popular star. Before this, he was just a taxi driver. It was because of his love for movies and his seriousness towards the role that director Steven took a liking to him and eventually became a successful actor. Was Vincent really that popular now? Chen Zhao didn't know much about Hollywood and didn't usually watch entertainment news. In fact, Vincent only had a certain level of fame now. As for how popular he was, that was an exaggeration. However, among the extras, Vincent was a very inspirational presence. Vincent's rise to fame was rather short. Secondly, the media had exaggerated it. They had made Vincent's rise to fame into an inspirational story. Of course, it could also be CAA's advertising strategy. Following that, a few more actors were eliminated. When Guilu looked at Chen Zhao, his eyes were filled with worry. Buddy, be careful. Looks like this audition is stricter than expected. Just then, a short-haired man sitting next to Chen Zhao glanced at him in disdain. This guy isn't an actor at all. He definitely won't have a chance. Chen Zhao glanced at the short-haired man and ignored him. What, you don't believe me? I don't think he even knows his lines, or how many roles there are. Don't talk there, the worker next to him scolded. You're next. The short-haired man stood up and adjusted his collar, looking very confident. Director James, hello. I'm auditioning for a supermarket security guard. Guilu watched the short-haired man's performance on stage. This guy is a professional actor, different from us. I think his performance is average. He doesn't seem to be much better than you. No, his eyes, the way he looks when he's in character. People like us who haven't learned acting can't express that. As expected, after the short-haired man's performance, the 3 directors, including James, all clapped. Good performance. You passed. Next. The short-haired man answered confidently. The short-haired man replied confidently, as if he had never considered the possibility of failing the audition. Just as he expected, he got the role easily. The short-haired man glanced at Chen Zhao proudly. Idiot, go back early. Don't embarrass yourself here. This place is for real actors, not people like you. What if I get the role? Chen Zhao asked, looking at the short-haired man. Here's $100. If you get any of the roles, it's yours. Buddy, I believe you. I'll give you $100 too. I bet you can succeed. Guilu gritted his teeth and took out the money. Just then the worker pointed at Chen Zhao. It's your turn. I bet you can't get the role too. Chen Zhao gave the worker the finger and walked onto the stage. James was stunned when he saw Chen Zhao. Just then, the casting director beside James asked, which role do you want to audition for? Whatever, Chen Zhao said. I'll play whatever role you give me, as long as I get 1 minute of screen time. Guilu covered his face. It was his $100. The 2 casting directors next to James were also speechless. Who do you think you are? 1 minute of screen time? All the supporting roles combined wouldn't get more than 5 minutes of screen time. How could he get 1 minute of screen time? James picked up the script and flipped through it. Then he said, Robert A is shot to death in the end. How about that? Chapter 702. Everyone followed his gaze. They were all curious. Who would dare to say anything during an audition? But when they saw the person walking out from behind the scenes, shock was written all over everyone's faces. Steven. How could it be him? Why was he here? Usually, Even the main director did not need to be present when casting a minor or minor role. It was James' first time being the main director, so he wanted to do everything himself. But why would Steven appear at this audition? At this time, the actors who had not yet auditioned were all sitting upright. Everyone stared at Steven with shining eyes. Was he here to choose a role too? Would he take a liking to her? I don't think it's tragic enough to be killed by random gunfire. Steven looked at Chen Zhao. James, arrange a role for me. I want to end his life with my own hands. No, then I'll play the villain. I'll blow up this poor old man's head. Chen Zhao said immediately. I'll play an old detective. I'll blow up his *SS with a gun. I'll strangle him with a rope, Chen Zhao said, pointing at Steven. James, design an action scene for me. I'll use my fist to let him feel my strength. James covered his face as he watched Chen Zhao and Steven bicker on stage. Everyone else was dumbfounded. The short-haired man felt that Chen Zhao would probably be kicked out, not to mention getting a role. I don't care, Steven said shamelessly. I have to kill him in the movie. I don't care, Steven said shamelessly. I have to kill him anyway. Why don't the two of you die together? I have no other choice, James said. Everyone stared at James in disbelief. He actually didn't agree to Steven's request. Could that Asian be some kind of superstar? That was even more impossible. There was no such person in Hollywood. Fine, let's die together, Chen Zhao said. I'm already satisfied to be able to kill a famous director. I can't beat you in real life, but I can finally beat you in the movie. I'm satisfied too. The extras all looked at Chen Zhao with jealousy. This guy could actually act with Steven? After all, this was Steven's first appearance in a movie, and he was lucky enough to be able to act with Steven. Why wasn't such a good opportunity hers? Let me teach you how to act in front of the camera. You're a good director, but that doesn't mean you're a good actor. You might not even be as good as me. At this moment, the extras felt like killing someone. Who cared if Steven could act or not? Even if he acted like a pile of shit, people would still be willing to watch. Being able to interact with Steven in the movie would definitely attract more attention. This was a good opportunity to become famous. Chen, Mr. Steven, can you come down first? The audition is still going on. Chen Zhao and Steven didn't want to steal the show, so they sat on the seats next to them. The surrounding actors instantly tensed up, not even daring to breathe loudly. Nice to meet you. This is my new friend, Guilu. Then he pointed at Steven. I don't think I need to introduce this guy, right? Mr. Steven, hello. If you have any roles in the future, you can find him. He's a very professional actor, Chen Zhao said. Are you trying to make him a second Vincent? Steven asked, chuckling. Everyone was shocked and stared at Chen Zhao in shock. Could it be that Vincent, who was known as the strongest passerby king, and had played out an unknown story in 5 minutes, was made by this man? I don't have that ability. If you don't give him a suitable role, there's nothing I can do. You've already spoken, Steven said. What else can I say? I'll arrange a role for him in the next movie. At this moment, the surrounding people were all heartbroken. If they'd known that this Asian knew Steven, they would have learned from Guilu and gotten close to him. Oh, Chen Zhao suddenly remembered and looked at the short-haired man. $100, thank you. And you? Chen Zhao looked at the worker. Steven watched as Chen Zhao accepted $200. What are you doing? Do you need money? No, I want to bet. The short-haired man looked bitter. Chen Zhao glanced at him. If Steven found out, he'd definitely lose his role. You *Shoal, aren't you embarrassed? I won the money fair and square. What's there to be embarrassed about? I don't care. You have to act in my next movie, no matter what role you want. My promise last time still stands. You can even be the main character. Everyone was going crazy with jealousy. They'd begged for a role but couldn't. But Chen Zhao could easily act in Steven's movie. Steven even said that he could even be the main character. Indeed, comparing oneself to others was infuriating. Any male lead who played the role of Steven would become famous overnight. Not interested. If I wasn't so free recently, I wouldn't even come to James. Hearing Chen Zhao's answer, everyone wanted to kill him. This was director Steven's movie. How could you reject such an opportunity? Is there something wrong with your brain? Chen Zhao's pursuit was different from theirs. He liked fame and money too. But he didn't like to expose everything about himself under the fluorescent lights. Just thinking about it made Chen Zhao scared. Moreover, a main character in a movie would take at least 4 to 5 months, from the beginning of filming to the end of publicity. It was fine to play a small role occasionally, but he'd rather die if he had to stay in the crew all the time. Guailu, I'm leaving now. See you if there's a chance. Bye. Chen Zhao and Steven stood up to leave. Just then Steven suddenly stopped. Oh, aren't you going to give me your contact number? Sorry. Guailu had thought that Steven was just being polite. He didn't think that Steven would really ask for his contact number. The short-haired man was very upset. He'd been mocking him earlier. Now that he'd been kicked in the face, it was easy to imagine how unhappy he was. Chen Zhao and Steven's roles were also decided. Chen Zhao would be a bandit, and Steven would be an old cop. They'd be outside the main battlefield. There were a dozen scenes in total. After entering the main plot, they'd have to fight from beginning to end. Chapter 703. Chen Zhao and Steven were about to walk out of the studio when 3 people walked in. The one in front was Yafen. She was still dressed sexily, and had 2 assistants behind her. Hi Chen. Under everyone's gaze, Yafen opened her arms and hugged Chen Zhao passionately. Everyone's eyes widened. She was so many people's goddess. Now she was hugging Chen Zhao so passionately. Then Yafen hugged Steven too. Mr. Steven, why are you here? Steven looked at Yafen in confusion. Ever since the movie had been released, Yafen had naturally received more attention as the female lead. Her status had also soared from the bottom of the B-list to the A-list actresses. If she participated in James' movie, she would definitely be the female lead. However, this was only an audition for a secondary role. With her status, she couldn't participate in this kind of audition. I want to ask James for a role, Yafen said, smiling. She hadn't come here without a reason. She'd heard that Chen Zhao and Steven were here, so she'd come. She had a mole in James' crew. A smart woman like her wouldn't get carried away. Even though she'd become famous overnight, her status was still unstable. So, she needed to continue strengthening her position in Hollywood. What did she have to do to strengthen her position? It was simple. Continue hugging people. Of course, she didn't need to lower her head to any role like before. Now there weren't many people who could provide her with benefits. But Steven was definitely one. No one could say no to him. But it wasn't like she didn't have any. For example, her other backer, Chen Zhao. It could be said that she completely relied on Chen Zhao's help to become famous. If Chen Zhao hadn't recommended her to Steven, she probably wouldn't have her current achievements. So when she heard that Chen Zhao and Steven were going to make a cameo in James' movie, she'd directly come to recommend herself. As the director, James was also happy to give Yafen a cameo role. After all, Yafen had a lot of box office appeal now. Even a cameo role would bring her some profits. James, I want to act as a couple with Chen. James rolled his eyes. Yafen, Chen's the villain. Then we'll be thieves. Fine, as long as you're happy. The group of extras all looked envious. Where did that man come from? Steven and Yafen were actually fighting to act with him. They were either rivals or lovers. Regardless of whether it was Steven or Yafen, one of them would be enough. Where are you going now? Don't follow me, Steven said. It's a men's party. Yafen was a sensible woman. Since Steven didn't allow her to follow, she wouldn't ask for trouble. All right. Don't show up in front of me again. I know you're all fake. Norma yelled. The 2 maids beside Norma were confused. Had they done something wrong? Miss, are you talking to us? No, it has nothing to do with you. Get out of my sight. I told you I won't believe you. Norma screamed frantically. Just then Prague walked over. Prague waved his hand and dismissed all the servants. Norma, what's the matter? Are you okay? Norma frowned. Prague, when did you come? I just arrived. I'm tired. You can go back. Norma, I'm here to discuss our marriage with you. Norma, I like you. Let me take care of you for the rest of your life. Prague walked up and held Norma's hands. Norma tried but couldn't pull her hands out. I'll think about it, Norma replied. Prague stared at Norma. No one could see his expression. His eyes flickered with uncertainty. He opened his hands slightly, as if he was going to strangle Norma's neck. But Norma couldn't see anything. After a moment of silence, Prague put down his hands. Norma, I feel that you're rejecting me. Can you tell me why? Did I do something wrong? No, you're great. Even Prague could hear Norma's perfunctory tone. This made Prague even more displeased. He had done everything, but he still couldn't get Norma's approval. Let's eat together. No, I don't want to eat yet. Norma leaned on her cane and left alone. Norma instinctively rejected Prague. A woman's intuition was very sharp. Especially a woman like Norma who couldn't see. She had always been the kind of person who was extremely rational. She didn't know when she started to notice it. She just didn't like Prague. She even rejected him. Norma's unapproachable attitude made Prague even more displeased. These days, some strangers appeared around him. They seemed to be spying on him. If Norma didn't send them, then it must be that uncle of hers. Prague wasn't sure how he gave himself away. So he didn't have much time left. He had to act as soon as possible. He couldn't waste any more time. Prague took out a small glass bottle. After he opened the lid, a faint aroma floated out. Norma's footsteps suddenly stopped. Figures appeared in front of her again. Norma, are you okay? Prague knew that the hallucinogenic drug was working. He immediately pretended to be concerned and went forward to help her. But what greeted him was Norma's cane. Without any warning, Norma waved the cane towards Prague's face. Ah, what are you doing? Prague covered his face in pain. It's you. It's all your fault. Everything, it's all your fault. Norma roared hysterically. I knew it. I didn't notice you every time you came to me. I didn't even know when you were by my side. But just now, I smelled that aroma. Prague's eyes darkened. Norma, what nonsense are you talking about? Just then a maid walked over. Prague glanced at her. Miss Norma is acting up again. Bring her back to the room. The maid nodded slightly. Yes, Mr. Prague. Go away, all of you go away. Norma wanted to break free from the maid, but the maid was much stronger than her. She couldn't resist at all. Miss, you need to behave. The maid's voice rang in Norma's ears. You're in cahoots. Chapter 704. Mr. Lewis, Prague has entered the manor. Miss Norma's illness is acting up again. I knew it was that bastard, Lewis yelled. At first, he was doubtful of Chen Zhao's words, and thought that Chen Zhao had made a mistake. Therefore, he only sent someone to follow Prague, and planted an informant in Norma's manor. Of course, the so-called informant was actually Norma's butler. And this butler was not a butler in the ordinary sense. He specialized in serving his family. Furthermore, he had a lot of power. As long as he thought it was possible, he could do it. Even if his master didn't agree, he could make his own decisions. Lewis was extremely anxious. Although he currently had the most assets in the family. But the true heir of the family wasn't him, but Norma. Norma was the most important heir of the family. Even Lewis served Norma. It seemed that Chen Zhao's guess was right. There was indeed something wrong with Prague. How's Norma now? Miss Norma's reaction seems to be bigger than usual today. And she's hitting everyone she sees. Now she's been brought back to her room. You brought it back to your room? Where's Prague now? In Miss Norma's room too. Just him alone. No, there's also a maid. Lewis's heart skipped a beat. He didn't know what Prague wanted to do. But it would be very difficult for him to do Norma any harm at the farm. Unless he was in the manor and had a mole. And who could get close to Norma so easily? It could only be someone in the manor, especially Norma's maid. Bring people in immediately. Hurry up and protect Norma, Lewis shouted anxiously. I'll bring people over immediately. The butler was a little anxious when he heard Lewis's words. Originally, it was not convenient for him to casually enter Norma's room, because of his identity. Now that he heard Lewis's words, he immediately noticed. Norma seemed to be trying to attack the maid who was holding her. He had watched Norma grow up, and he recognized Norma's upbringing. Norma would never attack a maid. There was something wrong with that maid. The butler immediately called a few servants over. Follow me. The butler brought them to Norma's room and pushed the door open. He didn't push it away. Break it open. Ah. This is the young lady's room. The servants were a little hesitant. "Break it open," the butler ordered again. Bang, bang. At this moment Norma, Prague, and the maid in the room heard the crash outside the door. Prague's expression changed. "Oh no, we've been exposed." The maid was still calm. "It doesn't matter. It will be exposed sooner or later anyway." "What now?" Prague asked nervously. "Then we won't be able to get the Klallam family's wealth." "You're after Klallam's property." "But I'm not," the maid said calmly. "Undine, what do you mean? Are you going back on your word?" Prague looked at the maid angrily. "I don't mean to go back on my word. If everything goes well, of course I wouldn't mind you getting the Klallam family's wealth. But now that everything is exposed, do you think the plan can still be carried out?" Prague's face became even more gloomy, and he shot a cold glare at Undine. If his eyes could kill at this moment, Undine would have been hacked into pieces by him. However, Undine didn't care. She just glanced at Prague. "What if they rush in?" "They won't be able to unless they blow the door open," Undine said calmly. Undine said indifferently. She had been serving in this manor for 10 years. She knew this manor better than Prague. She knew how sturdy Norma's room was. Undine's mentality was much better than Prague's. Even in this situation, she didn't move. Prague was scared to death. "What now? What do we do?" "Tie her up," Undine said, pointing at Norma. "What are you doing? What do you want?" Norma struggled crazily, but she was still no match for Prague. Prague lay on Norma's body, greedily inhaling her fragrance. Such a sweet smell. Prague's hands started to get naughty. No matter how Norma struggled, it was useless. Undine looked back at Prague. "You better finish it in 3 minutes. Otherwise, you better get out of the way now. That door is hard to destroy, but it doesn't mean it's absolutely safe." Prague climbed up reluctantly from Norma's body. He turned back to look at Undine. Undine was holding a dagger. The dagger was carved with obscure patterns. Just then, Louis arrived at the manor with his men. "What's the situation now?" "Master Louis, Mrs. locked inside," the butler said. "The door can't be opened." Louis looked at the metal door that was like a piece of art. "Can you handle it?" "Boss, this door can't be opened by humans alone, but we can blow it up." "Then blow it up. We need to get materials from the car. Hurry up." Suddenly, Norma's screams came from inside the room. "Ah, ah, ah." The expressions of everyone outside the door changed. Louis even exclaimed, "Hurry, hurry, hurry. Go get the things." Inside the room, Undine dug one of Norma's eyeballs out. Norma let out a heart-wrenching scream, but Undine ignored it. Prague looked at this scene and felt a chill in his heart. Undine was even crueler than he had imagined. Undine was unmoved by Norma's bloody body. She held Norma's eyeball in her hand. Her originally beautiful face had become horrifying. Her eyeball had been dug out without any anesthesia or pain relief. How much pain was this? Perhaps only the person herself knew how painful it was. After digging out the eyeball, Undine didn't plan to stop. He chanted an incomprehensible magic incantation, raised his dagger, and slowly approached Norma's other eye. Boom! Suddenly, the impact of the explosion outside the door knocked Undine off her bed. At the same time, Prague was also knocked over. Undine's reaction was extremely fast. She immediately jumped down from the bed, flipped over, and pulled a lamp rack beside her. A secret door appeared on the wall of the room. Undine directly rushed in. "Wait for me." Prague had just climbed up from the ground. But at this time, the people outside had already rushed in. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.